Uh, I am from just like the prince said. Let me give some brief introduction and my little background so as you can understand the crux of the matter which I am speaking. I am from Ahmedabad. I had my post graduation in finance. After that, I worked with an multinational company in an analyst role for 3 years. After that, I went to a PSU banking in the credit profile for 1 year, and after that, right now, since 9 years, I am working with a state government NBFC in the credit module itself. And apart from the professional experience, I manage my funds. I don't have an registration. I'm not an RIA. It's just that I manage uh, my funds selfly, and whatever I learn, I sometimes I'll share it with the on the social media sites like Twitter. So that was the brief intro. I have an experience in banking, so that's why you might, if you have seen my previous tweets, my exposure towards banking was higher, little higher, because of the nature in which I am working right now. So hope you like the session.
Sure, Palak. Look forward to that. So, Aditya, Vineet, Ravi, in that order, you guys can do. And we also have Ravi Bandari. Meanwhile, I'm sending him a request. Yeah.
Hey Prince, good evening. I hope you are all right. I think गोवा का ज़्यादा कुछ effect हो गया.
Yeah,
Uh,
all good, man. Nothing like that. And when it comes to spaces, I'm always on. So, no, not a problem. Yeah.
and today, before we start, we should celebrate what a great achievement India has done by landing our Chandrayaan on the moon. Right. Anyway, apart from that, I will give a brief introduction about myself. I am a SEBI registered investment advisor, and I am a CFA charter holder. Uh, I practice investment management where we advise clients on long-term investments and we don't speculate in the market. The first point. The second point is I have a long experience in the banking and the financial services sector where I've been invested for the last 12 years. And I also consult with a bank, one-on-one consult with a bank where we are helping the bank to digitalize a lot of their processes. So from that perspective, I also understand what is going on deep inside most of these banks. Uh, that's how it is. And if you were to see, I am the lead analyst across many TV channels as well. So before I hand it over to everybody, I would just like to say nothing that at least I discuss is an investment advice. We may have positions across, if we discuss stock specific, then we may have positions across many of these stocks. So nothing should be construed as an investment advice. This is just for educational purposes. Please consult your financial advisor before you take any investment decisions.
Thanks, Aditya. So, Vineet, over to you.
Hi everyone. Prince, please take care of your health. मौसम खराब है बारिश भी हो रही है आज तो. And congratulations everyone on Chandrayaan. On the background, I am an ex-investment banker, private equity person with an MBA finance degree. I have been in markets for close to around 18, 19 years now. Worked in many companies in different sectors also. I have been financially independent since past 3, 4 years now, and I am not a registered advisor or any financial advisor or associated with any company for that matter for any financial gains. Anything which I say here or discuss here, it's purely my opinion and is not a investment advice of any sorts. Please, consult your financial advisor in case you want to take such.
Thanks, Vineet.
Thank you.
Ravikant.
Hi everyone. First of all, congratulations everyone for the great feat which ISRO has achieved, and I mean, it has brought us unsurmountable amount of joy and happiness. It's really very heartening to see the kind of reactions which people have, genuine reactions, And yeah, Prince जी, थोड़ा सा तबीयत का ख्याल रखने की चेष्टा कीजिए. ठीक है, ख्याल रखिए because you are very your effort in bringing together the investing community for different topics and all is very important. So as far as my introduction goes, I'm an engineer. I did my engineering from NIT Calicut. I've also done my master's in economics. I have cleared CFA all levels as well as FRM, though I'm not a charter holder right now. And work experience wise, I have worked in both public sector as well as private sector. In private sector specifically, my work experience is related to is pursued with investment banking, private equity division with one of the leading banks in the world. And I've been in the market since like my graduation third year, 2009. That's the year. And yeah, I'm an currently I'm an individual investor. As people say that yes, I'm financially independent, and that's pretty much about it. I'm pretty passionate about studying businesses, understanding businesses, and learning from folks like our co-speaker Aditya, then Vineet sir, then I can see Kaushik Mohan here also, and obviously Prince you. So that's pretty much on my part. I think you should send us a request to Kaushik, because this matter is of great interest and his and utility as far as Kaushik is concerned.
Right. Kaushik, you can go next, then we go to Ravi Bandari.
Yeah, hi, thanks Ravi bhai. Thanks Prince for the opportunity. Majorly I have come here to learn because banking and finance मुझे आता नहीं है. I'm more of a manufacturing guy. So this is space I'm trying to learn over here. So my background, I'm a lead analyst at Ashika Institutional Equities and also an individual investor, practicing investing since 2013, and major expertise come in forensic accounting. So this is been my background, and majority of my work is actually on visiting the companies on their plants and get the insights from them. And that's all from my end.
Surely look
Thank
forward to good questions from your end. So Ravi Bandari, over to you.
Hey, friends, yeah, great to connect with all the people, all the learned people. I've been in market for more than 10 years, to track multiple sectors and can say keen observer and learner of the market. Looking forward to the discussion.
Thanks, man. So Aditya or Vineet, any one of you can kickstart the discussion, and I would request each of the speakers to limit their time and rotate so that we can make the discussion more interactive. Having said that, I'm not asking you to cut on the insights you have, but again, try to be make it more interactive. Yeah, over to you guys.
Okay, so let's start off. I will try to lay down some bit of context, and then from there on we can build up. So I will lay down the context on where the sector is really today. From there on, we'll take it forward from there. So we, for financials, we need to really understand from 2018 to about 2021, it was a very bad cycle for financials. From 18 to 21, right from the ILFS crisis to DHFL to Yes Bank going bankrupt, and from then on, the COVID NPAs hitting the banks was a devastating phase for the banks, where at least for 2.5, 3 years, credit growth was practically zero. So that was the bottom of the cycle, where credit was not really growing and we had a lot of problems. NPAs were coming out, NPAs were swelling, and a lot of problems were really happening. Now, over the last 2.5, 3 years, banks have spent a lot of time cleaning up their balance sheets, recognizing most of the NPAs that were there in the system, and they had huge capital that they were willing to deploy, because over the last 2 to 3 years, credit growth bilkul bhi nahi tha. So now what is happening? Once COVID is behind us and the economy is in a full-fledged mode, and the government is also stepping in by providing boost to many sectors, such as or manufacturing, railways, roads, and all those type of sectors. What is really happening? The demand for credit is picking up. We've seen that the RBI is saying that the credit growth from a lower base, we are coming out of a credit growth which was at a 50-year low, and from that 50-year low, we are moving to a credit growth. We had a credit growth of about 20%. And now that credit growth is slowly moving down to 15%, which could be sustainable for the next 12 to 36 months. Anywhere between the next 12 to 36 months, uh, this credit cycle will go on. So basically, where we are in the cycle, where chemicals were in 2021, we are in the early stages of a huge upcycle, and because of that, any lender and all lender is getting re-rated, irrespective of the quality. In any sector, when the sector goes through a massive bull run, all type of companies get re-rated, be it PSU banks, be it micro lenders, be it small private banks, or be it large private sector banks. If there is a scope for re-rating, if there is no scope for re-rating, there'll be no re-rating per se. That's where we are on the lending sector right now. Formation of new NPAs is extremely low, will continue to remain so at least for the next 12 to 24 months. Banks have huge amounts of capital that they are willing to deploy, and ROEs and ROAs for all banks continue to touch new highs. In fact, this quarter, the most profitable company in the country was SBI. It had made somewhere around 88,000 crores of profit. And this phenomenon could continue for the next 12 to 24 months, post which we'll see what really happens. So that's the broad context of where we are on the financials.
Yeah, Vineet.
Hi. So, I understand everyone in the market is pretty bullish. Every TV channel you see, every analyst you see, and every advisor you see, everyone is very bullish on banking. However, we have to be wary of the fact when everybody is on one side, it's usually a consensus trade, and when it's a consensus trade, usually it never works. So I am not very bullish on banking. I am bullish on the longer run, but for the shorter run, I am not very bullish on it. Why? I have a couple of reasons. I understand the credit cycle is good, the NPA cycle is good, etc., etc., and I am completely aware of the fact that how credit cycle is moving. But we have to be cognizant of the fact that anything related to interest rates in the economy, or since banking sector is primarily majorly owned by FIIs, any money outflow from the market would gradually get impacted in the banking sector itself. So NIMs have already peaked out in last quarter itself. This quarter they have started coming down. And if we talk about cost of funds, all of that had a lagging effect. The cost of fixed deposits have increased. The cost of funds are continues to go up and up, because if you look at the CRR ratio also, which was introduced, the special CRR of 10% for the excess liquidity to be sucked out, that is also making breaking the liquidity out of the system. So again, I am not very bullish in the shorter run, probably next 6 months to 12 months. But yes, in a longer run, India story is a growth story and financialization story. And hence, I am very bullish on banking in a longer run. But again, time and again, it has proven that it is a cyclical nature, and everything has a cycle. Since NIM speaked out, cost of funds going up, FDs, etc., at a higher rate, and given the kind of results this quarter has come out with private sector banks, if you look at the employee cost itself, some of the major banks like HDFC has 35% jump quarter on quarter for employee cost per branch, which is unprecedented in the history, and the cost to income ratio has gone up so far. So people will say that quarter one is usually a bad quarter for the bank and it's seasonal in nature. Then in that sense, you have to compare it with the last Q1 also. Last Q1 was also not this bad. So point is, though NPAs etc. and GNPAs etc. are moving in line with the industry, because the cycle is like that, but rest of the parameters are on a cyclical downtrend. For example, cost to income, for example, NIM. And if God forbid, RBI starts increasing interest rates again, then my treasury income will also go down the drain. So we have to be very cognizant of the fact. Shorter run, I am not very bullish. Longer run, I am very bullish. My first instance was I exited at the peak NIM last quarter itself from the banking, and I am right now not looking to enter into banking for the time being. I am open for any discussions.
again, my view is really personal and maybe, in my opinion, biased, because I am not invested in banking right now. But again, no offense to anyone, no offense to any analyst, no offense to any banking special person. I have my own criteria where I look at from the banking parlance, and hence this is what I am quoting. So open for any discussions. I would like to have views from everyone, then we can have a healthy discussion on it.
All right, Vineet. So Ravikant, you can keep your opening note. Then we go to Falak and Ravindra Bhai.
Yes, sir. So, like as very well, put by Aditya and Vineet Sarji. So we need to understand there are two things. A good business need not be a good investment. This is a very strong reality which we as an investor we need to keep this in mind very properly. And as Aditya pointed out, that the banking sector, the financial sector, I would say rather, like, to broaden the spectrum, has been coming out of a long phase of consolidation where it was marred by like huge scandals, like regulatory changes, bank near bank failures and all, which marked the kind of the ebb or the consolidation phase of the entire sector. As a result of which, like post several reforms like which have been pushed in by the government also, like IBC and all, the sector is gradually like moving out of the shadows and now showing performance. Then in that context we need to keep in mind one thing, that as Vineet Sarji pointed out, that like in an environment where like we have rising interest rate, we still are able to see this phenomenal performance by banks. And to a fair extent, that performance in terms of percentage numbers is largely because of base effect also. So that needs to be kept in mind. Second point is, sir, like, financials in itself is a very, very broad spectrum. Like from microfinance, where you are trying to, bank the unbanked or like, reach the bottom of the pyramid, to outright DFIs, that is like, dedicated financial institutions which fund huge infra projects. These need to be broken down separately because the sensitivity of rising interest rate, regulatory changes is very different for each one of them. And only when we study each one of them, each one of these categories separately, then we can actually zero down onto opportunities which actually have margin of safety and have a relatively longer runway. Because Prince Bhai, like any business for that matter, is cyclical in nature. What we need to focus as an investor is that where the curvature of the cyclicality is least, so that we do not get trapped at the peak of the cycle, about which Vinith Bhai is very, very properly wary of. That already NIMs have peaked, and that is being reflected in the kind of, like, even if you track price movement, in the price movement of specific stocks. So one needs to be very nuanced in their approach, so that they do not get caught up by the euphoria around the entire sector. Because like if you get caught at the wrong stage of the cycle, I mean, this adage, like, a good business need not be a good investment, will come out really true in your portfolio itself. So that's pretty much from my side, and I will keep adding as we go ahead.
Thanks, Ravi. So Falak, over to you.
Yeah. Uh, During this conversation, I heard that speaker Kaushik Bhai, who was not from banking background. So there might be many other listeners who might not be from the banking background. So let me just get it to the banking. I'm limiting here only to banking, non-banking. I'm not considering any other financials at the moment. Okay, so बैंकिंग बेसिकली है क्या? अगर हम एज ए लेमैन बात करें, सो बैंकिंग बेसिकली यू पूल मनी फ्रॉम पीपल, you lend money to people, you invest remaining to several places, and you try to minimize your losses and maximize your margins. बेसिकली ये है. अभी हम ये अभी जो जैसे अर्लियर स्पीकर्स ने सबने बोला कि लास्ट ईयर में सबके रिजल्ट्स अच्छे आए हैं, यू माइट बी सीइंग दैट सारी बैंकों के रिजल्ट अच्छे आए। ऐसा कैसे हो सकता है कि हर एक ही साल में सभी के रिजल्ट अच्छे आए हो? सो लेट अंडरस्टैंड द बेसिक फंडामेंटल ऑफ द बैंकिंग सिनारियो। सो व्हाट हैपेंस, अगर बैंकिंग का रॉ मटेरियल क्या है? पैसा। अगर कोई बैंक सस्ते में रॉ मटेरियल लेती है और महंगे में सेल्स करती है तो उसका मार्जिन ज्यादा रहता है। एंड सिमिलरली वाइस वर्सा सिचुएशन, अगर महंगे में रॉ मटेरियल मिलता है और सस्ते में या एट पार देना पड़ता है तो उनका मार्जिन श्रिंक हो जाता है। तो व्हाट हैपेंड इन द बैंकिंग इन लास्ट 1 ईयर? आरबीआई ने रेट्स ड्रास्टिकली बढ़ा दिए, शॉर्टर टर्म में बढ़ा दिए। उससे चलते क्या हो गया, लोन्स जो है, लोन्स में इमीडिएट इम्पैक्ट आता है। लोन्स आर फ्लोटिंग इन नेचर, कुछ कुछ फिक्स रहती है बट दे आर वेरी मिनिमल इन परसेंटेज, बट मेजोरिटी ऑफ द लोन इज फिक्स्ड इन नेचर। तो जो हमने सेल्स किया था वो इमीडिएटली ज्यादा रिटर्न देगा हमें। सपोज 1% बढ़ा है तो 1% ऑफ द लोन इमीडिएटली इम्पैक्ट आएगा, जबकि डिपॉजिट जो हमारा रॉ मटेरियल है उसमें ये इम्पैक्ट आते आते एवरेज 1 साल जैसा लग जाता है। जो न्यू डिपॉजिट बनती है, अगर आप बैंक में जाते हो न्यू डिपॉजिट बनेगी तो उसमें अपडेटेड रेट रहेगा, लेकिन जो अर्लियर डिपॉजिट पड़ी है जिनकी मैच्योरिटी से 1 ईयर, 1.5 ईयर, 6 मंथ्स रहती है, तो वो तो फिक्स हो गया, हमारा लो रेट पे रॉ मटेरियल मिला है हमें। तो उसमें अगर रेट बढ़ेगा तो उसका इम्पैक्ट आते आते उसको मैच्योरिटी के बाद जब रोल ओवर होगा तब आएगा। सो टिल द टाइम दो एफडी जो है सारी मैच्योर होती है, वी आर गेटिंग, भले मार्केट में रेट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट बढ़ गया है, हमारा रॉ मटेरियल तो सस्ते भाव पे है, हमारे पास जो स्टॉक है वो तो सस्ते रेट पे है, लेकिन हमने जो लोन दे रहे हैं वो तो इमीडिएटली प्राइस अप हो गया है। तो इस ये जो लास्ट ईयर में जो आपने देखा कि सारी बैंक के अचानक से प्रॉफिट कर रही है, वन ऑफ द रीजन वाज दिस। ये सारे डिपॉजिट जो है इसका इम्पैक्ट आते आते इट टेक्स टाइम, सम टेक्स 1 ईयर, 1.5 ईयर। और लैंडिंग में भी कैसा रहता है कि लैंडिंग में इमीडिएट इफेक्ट आता है। तो ये डिफरेंस का जो है वो आपने इनऑर्डिनेट सब में प्रॉफिट एक्सपांशन देखा, नेट इंटरेस्ट मार्जिन एक्सपांशन देखा। अभी रही बात एनपीए की। सो एनपीए कम सभी बैंकों का कैसे आया अचानक से? बिकॉज जो रेगुलेटर है, फ्यू इयर्स बैक जब एनपीए बहुत ज्यादा हो गया था, दे टुक इट वेरी स्ट्रिक्ट एक्शन कि जो भी है इमीडिएटली डिस्क्लोज करो, सिबिल में बताओ, आरबीआई को रिपोर्ट करो, उनके रिटर्न्स आते हैं, क्रेडिट रिटर्न्स एंड वगैरह रिटर्न्स आते हैं, उसमें दे वांट इमीडिएट टू इमीडिएटली उन्हें बताओ, डिस्क्लोज करो, ताकि उसके ऊपर इमीडिएट एक्शन लेके बिफोर इट ब्लोज अप उसके ऊपर एक्शन ले सकते हैं एंड अदर बैंक्स को ये इसकी इंफॉर्मेशन मिल सकती है। इसलिए जो एनपीए होने वाले थे वो होने से पहले अभी डिटेक्ट होने लगे हैं। सो द चांसेस ऑफ, ऐसा नहीं है कि एनपीए अभी नहीं होंगे, देयर कैन बी एनपीए, नॉट विलफुल बट विलफुल, मतलब मेरी मैं पैसे है फिर भी एनपीए होना चाहता हूँ, दैट इज विलफुल डिफॉल्टर। बट विलफुल बिना के भी एनपीए हो सकते हैं बिकॉज ऑफ वेरियस रीजन, धंधा डाला नहीं चला तो एनपीए हो सकता है, बट वो एनपीए अर्ली स्टेज में डिटेक्शन होके उसके ऊपर इम्पैक्ट आ सकता है, इसलिए वो एनपीए कंट्रोल में है इस वक्त। एंड दिस एनपीए जो पॉलिसी है, मतलब जो रेगुलेटरी पॉलिसी है, दैट इज वेरी स्ट्रिक्ट एंड ये कंटिन्यू रहेगी। सो गोइंग फॉरवर्ड एनपीए में स्पाइक आना मेरे हिसाब से चांसेस कम है, बट जो ये आपने एक साल में जो देखा इंटरेस्ट रेट का जो एक्सपांशन हुआ, आपको एनआईएम बढ़े सबके, सो सभी के बैलेंस शीट, सभी के पीएनएल, सभी के इनकम अचानक से अच्छे अच्छे दिखने लग गए, जिसके वजह से यूफोरिया क्रिएट हो गया कि भाई सारी बैंकें अभी चलेगी, चलेगी, नो डाउट चलेगी। बिग बैंक्स स्पेशली जो है, टॉप 2 बैंक्स, 3 बैंक्स, वो चलती रहेगी बिकॉज इसमें देखिए अभी अब तक तो बिकॉज ऑफ द मार्जिन गैप था उसके चलते प्रॉफिट मिला, लेकिन गोइंग फॉरवर्ड क्या रहेगा, अपने एक फंडामेंटल पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से इसको देखते हैं, एनालाइज करते हैं। सो जैसे जेफ बेजोस बोलते हैं व्हाट विल नॉट चेंज इन नेक्स्ट 10 ईयर्स। सो अगर ये चीज हम बैंक में लगाए, व्हाट विल नॉट चेंज इन नेक्स्ट 10 ईयर्स, तो दैट विल, द फंडामेंटल आंसर विल बी द बोरोवर हु वांट्स चीपेस्ट लोन एंड डिपॉजिटर हु वांट्स हाईएस्ट इंटरेस्ट ऑफ इट अलोंग विद द सेफ्टी ऑफ मनी। सो लोवेस्ट लेंडिंग वही कर सकता है जिसका कॉस्ट ऑफ बोरोइंग, मतलब जो डिपॉजिट्स है, जो उनके फंड्स है, रॉ मटेरियल जो है वो उनको सस्ता पड़ेगा, वही आगे सस्ता दे पाएगा। तो जैसे अभी हायर इंटरेस्ट रेट के सिनारियो जो चल रहा है, तो जिसमें लोग छोटी बैंक्स है, एनबीएफसी है, दे फाइंड इट वेरी डिफिकल्ट टू रेज देयर कैपिटल, बोरिंग, रेज देयर बोरिंग, सॉरी, उनको फंड लाने में दिक्कत होगी, उनका कॉस्ट ऑफ बोरिंग ज़्यादा रहेगा। जबकि बैंक्स, बिग बैंक्स स्पेशली जैसे एचडीएफसी है, आईसीआईसीआई, एसबीआई है, उनका पास कासा का पावर अच्छा खासा रहता है। तो गोइंग फॉरवर्ड भी उनके कॉस्ट ऑफ बोरिंग, जो डिपॉजिट का कॉस्ट है, वो कम रहेगा, जिसके चलते उनको ग्रोथ दिखेगा। बिकॉज वही एक ऐसी बैंक है जो अच्छे प्रोफाइल को सस्ते में दे सकती है एंड स्टिल दे कुड अर्न वेल। NIM में प्लस माइनस हो सकता है, बट दे विल स्टिल कंटिन्यू टू ग्रो बिकॉज ऑफ दिस मोड which is not available for a small bank or an NBFC. So I think I'm taking too much time. Let me do one thing. Let me pass it on to Ravi and I will speak ahead some आगे जाके डिस्कस करते हैं इसके ऊपर। रवि।
Yeah, thanks, Falak. Actually, uh, most of the people have covered almost everything, but let me pick the good part from what everyone has said and try to engage with the audience. एक चीज जो what happened in last 2 3 years, what Aditya also pointed out, okay, the lending from the banks from say 2014 to 2017-18 till the moment of ILFS, the banks has lost market share to NBFCs. सो बैंक वेर नॉट जनरली बैंक में क्या होता है ना कि आप लेंड करो और इमीडिएटली एनपीए आता नहीं है, इट विल एज 2 या 3 साल बाद पता चलता है कि एनपीए आएगा कि नहीं आएगा, अदरवाइज इट्स आउटराइट फ्रॉड कि समवन हैज टेकन अ लोन एंड विद इन अ 6 months he is gone somewhere else. Otherwise it takes 2 to 3 years for the aging and then to discover whether the project is doing well or not. So the banking universe was not lending aggressively in 2014 to 18 till ILFS, and that was the time when NBFCs and all other sort of HFCs and MFIs they grab the market share from the bank again become not aggressive, but when NBFCs took a back seat, the bank again became aggressive, or they were finding the vacuum which need to be filled, and hence the AUM growth continued from there. What happened in last 12 to 15 months was there was two components. One was the slack from 2020, when the every activity, manufacturing, industrial activity was low or completely stopped. It was the engine was restarted. And the second thing was we were facing WPI was above 10%. तो आपका working capital requirement limit जो होता है banks का for the lending purpose, that also gone through the roof. That's why we saw that 20% increased growth in AUM last year, and which now the WPI itself falls to 6%, then that higher 5-7% which was there in last year has to be moderated. That is one part of the AUM. Second thing which I feel will happen is uh, some kind of networking effect, what we call is, जो larger become larger. Say, and for that now, one thing is there that technology is bringing everyone to a single direction. Everyone wants थोड़ा अगर philosophical thought दें इस पे कि everyone wants to read the same see the same Christopher Nolan. Everyone want to read the same J.K. Rowling. अगर investor की बात आएगी, then everyone wants to follow the same Warren Buffett. So it is the large becoming larger is happening everywhere in the world. So that, and banking itself after this 2010 to 20 run, banking is also becoming more or less like a commodity. So this help me. This makes me understand that the top four large private banks in India, as a overall, and plus SBI, will continue have gain market share and will continue to gain market share, because they, whenever anyone will think about banking, these are the top 4 5 names which will come to the mind. And few of the smaller banks which have completely outperformed in last 24 months, उसमें हुआ क्या ना, पीएनएल में two things happened. Say in this entire run of not lending aggressively to 2018 and subsequently keep on adding to your provisioning requirement, उसमें ऐसा हुआ कि पीसीआर of all these banks were very high.
during the time of COVID. Once COVID passed away, आपका PNL ऐसा था कि सबने पैसा उठाया हुआ था मार्केट से, तो मार्केट से जब आप बहुत इक्विटी ले लेते हो, your NIM is also expanding and your interest rate was moving up. आप deposit cost was moving at with a lag, and you have already provided a bulk from your previous NPS. So आपका provisioning requirement subsequently धीरे धीरे बहुत dramatically कम हो रहा था. That led to a time कि profit जो था, profit, ROA, ROE, everything almost for most downbeaten name was almost double. But now making it again the similar kind of leap forward would be very difficult for those smaller names. Coming back to the logic, everyone wants to bank with those similar tech heavy, larger presence, omnipresent banks. That itself make that kind of network effect that large player keep on gaining the market share. Someone mentioned that banking performance is not linked to stock performance. Completely true, and I am also experiencing this for last 12 months. बैंकिंग में क्या था इंडिया में कि if I dissect the top four bank among the top two and the next two, the first two were heavily loaded by FIIs. And when the massive selling came from when a 60-70% handle is selling, the 15-20% was not adequately equipped to absorb that amount of selling. That has happened in the first two bank in the private segment. Other thing which has helped the next two bank in this last 2 year play, if you see now the cost of borrowing for the second two is almost equivalent to the first two. Banking में अपना क्रिएटिव एज क्या है? एक तो इन्वेस्टर के दिमाग में परसेप्शन है कि इसका लेंडिंग एंड प्रोसेसेस आर वेरी क्लीन, सो दे विल, एंड द हिस्ट्री आल्सो सेज दैट, देन दे असाइन a very high multiple. But otherwise, for a banking, the raw material is only your cost of deposit, which if say HDFC and Kotak used to get at below 5%, while the ICICI and Axis used to get below above 5%, and the difference used to be 100-150 bips. तो आपको सेम काइंड ऑफ निम बनाने का है फॉर एक्सिस एंड आईसीआईसीआई, दे हैव टू गो विद one notch lower borrower so that they are able to manage the same kind of NIM which HDFC and Kotak was making. But in last 12 months, what has happened is the cost of borrowing for all the top four banks is more or less fairly aligned. There is difference, but there is not that difference which is used to be 3-4 years back. So now the third and the fourth bank, what they are trying to do is they are also catching up in the game of improving the lending profile. Apart from that thing, there will be consolidation. One was a forced consolidation which has happened from the PSU, which was forced by government. But I see there is huge reason for further consolidation, which is driven on an economic purpose. Say lot of these banks which raised fund in 2020. Think about this scenario. There are few banks who are sitting on a capital adequacy of 17-18%. One of the large private bank is above 22%. What happen if you are already making that 16-17% ROE and your AUM is only growing at 15-16%? There is no need of further capital. So you are already, if you are over capitalized, how you will augment your ROE if you are not increasing your AUM above the growth rate? For that reason, also, I believe the consolidation will happen. And there are, if you search out few names down south, there are few options which are available. And if you see the shareholding movement, how the shareholding movement is happening in some of the smaller banks there, you will see that these are being one of the few identified candidates for some kind of transaction. So that will be more on an economic purpose, not something which has happened in 2020, where the government forced some kind of merger. Apart from that, one thing is there that the way the banking has created wealth in the previous decade, it will be difficult because investor look for the ideas which definitely is growing at a stable or maybe at a higher clip. But then there should be a distinguishing factor between the two companies. Now banking become more and more commoditized. The distinguishing factor between the bank for a customer to choose is vanishing away. A 10-year back, I could have said that this bank has a larger penetration on this pocket penetration or this much of branches. Now that relevance is moving away. It's more of the bank research can be done from apart from the lending practice which the bank do. The other critical factor only remains is the digitization. How much you are spending on the digital. That also again becomes a factor that you're large enough, then you have the capacity to invest 1,000 crore on some kind of digital initiative, which the smaller banks which has balance sheet itself of 30, 40, 50,000 crore or something less than 1 lakh crore, they will find it difficult. So that again proves bring back to my thesis of the larger will continue to grow at a larger pace. But the flare of growth which the banking had, say 10, 15 years back, that kind of under-penetration is difficult to find now on a pan-India level and definitely not on the urban pocket. So maybe not directly the banking universe, but something else which is related to banking can get you that kind of superlative return what we used to make earlier. Otherwise, I agree that if you are bullish on India, banking is something which will continue to grow at 13, 14%. And if you're happy with that kind of return, then stick to a few of the selected name and you should be doing well. Yeah.
Yeah, Aditya, and guys, like whoever wants to speak, make it a point that you raise your hand and come so that the speaker can allow you to speak. Yeah, Aditya, please.
Yes, I was listening very patiently and diligently to all the views. Let's go deep down and understand what's really going on. Uh, so since I do a complete deep analysis, I want to bring out some facts. Point number one is this NIM contraction and expansion that analysts keep talking about. Let me frankly tell you that over the last 12 years, I don't know what is the NIM of the top three banks that I really hold, and it does not really matter. वो सिर्फ एनालिस्ट को मैटर करता है कि अगर आरबीआई इंटरेस्ट रेट हाई कर रहा है तो एनालिस्ट को बिल्कुल पता होना चाहिए कि वो at some point in time those NIMs will come back. That's not really that's a half-baked analysis if you say that the NIMs is really decreasing and that could pose a threat to the bank. Absolutely not. The real reason why these banks are going really well, of course, NIM expansion की वजह से temporary earnings में up boost हुआ है. वो that is just 10, 20, 10, 15, 20% of part of the story. But the real point here is दैट जब उनके प्री ऑपरेटिंग प्रॉफिट में से उनको प्रोविजंस नहीं करने पड़ रहे हैं, वो प्रोविजंस नहीं करने पड़ रहे हैं, उसकी वजह से फॉर एग्जांपल पीएसयू बैंक जो हैं लास्ट ईयर सेम टाइम दे हैड टू मेक ह्यूज प्रोविजंस बिकॉज दे वर कमिंग आउट ऑफ कोविड. नाउ दे डोंट हैव टू मेक दोस काइंड्स ऑफ प्रोविजंस एंड कंपनीज आर रिपोर्टिंग 100% profit growth and record high ROAs and ROEs. So point number one is, as KV Kamath said, KV Kamath is a veteran in banking. Now he heads Geo Financial Services. In his entire life, he's not seen these three recipes. A very strong economy. B, formation of new NPAs is low. The biggest critical factor in this cycle is there's been so much, so big system-wide cleanup after so many issues that formation of new NPAs is low. This formation of new NPAs being low could continue for the next 12 to 24 months. Lending is always cyclical. As I had said 2 years ago, that lending will do pretty well in the next 2 years. Now I am negative lending. And we have objectively sold some small private sector banks as well. But since we sell it does not mean that the cycle will go down. This cycle will continue at least for the next 12 to 24 months. But the market moves way ahead of the fundamentals and the market is already pricing in a very optimistic cycle. Like 21 में सब chemicals में up cycle में invest करके फंस गए थे. अभी भी हो सकता है, पॉसिबिलिटी है कि अभी हम अप साइकिल में हैं और कुछ बैंक जो कि सिक्लिकल रहेंगे वहां पे देयर कुड बी प्रॉब्लम्स. पॉइंट नंबर वन. पॉइंट नंबर टू विच आई वांटेड टू आल्सो से इज दैट in India, large private sector, this is a fact, this is driven by data, that in India, private sector banks market share in 2014 was about 35%. and now we are approaching 50% market share for private sector banks. A couple of points need to be very clear. Private sector banks are gaining market share from PSU banks in loan growth and deposit growth, both of them. Even in deposit growth, private sector banks are winning over PSU banks. Point number one. Point number two, within the private sector banks, what is really happening is large private sector banks are winning out both in loan growth and deposit, because large private sector banks borrow at subpar interest rate. In India, the inflation is at about 4%. Today, the repo rate stands at about 4.5%. And SBI borrows at about 3.6%. And ICICI borrows at about 3.8%. Kotak now borrows at about 3.9%. अगर आप 4% से नीचे borrow कर रहे हो तो आपको free money है वो, क्योंकि 4% इंडिया में inflation है. So because of their low cost of funds and excellent super franchise, all of these big banks, including SBI, have a very high deposit franchise. By deposits, I mean जो पैसे आप banks में रखते हो, and लोग इनके ऊपर भरोसा करते हैं. लोग इनके ऊपर भरोसा करते हैं तो ये market share gain कर रहे हैं. So they are gaining market share from small private sector banks, both in terms of loans and deposits. So what is happening is, एक side पे private sector banks PSU bank से market खींच रहे हैं, दूसरी साइड पे विद इन द प्राइवेट सेक्टर बैंक्स लार्ज प्राइवेट सेक्टर बैंक्स मार्केट खींच रहे हैं विद इन from the small private sector banks. That is the second most important point to really understand. The third most important point to understand is a lot of us are very stock price biased, right? That's a real issue that is there. Let's take the example of the largest private sector lender in this country. Vineet raised the point that they have a employee cost which is driven 35% higher. So what is really going on? Most of the people have got it wrong, and I'm glad that Nitin Kamath has tweeted this, that इन इंडिया यू कैनॉट बी डिजिटल. इंडिया में आप हो ही नहीं सकते. मैं जाके गाँव में बैंक, एक छोटे बैंक के लिए मैं जाके गाँव में सर्वे किया है लोगों का कि वो क्या चाहते हैं, एंड पीपल वांट ब्रांचेस इन स्मॉल rural India. People want branches. They cannot do without branches. They need people to help them, and that's how it really works in India. So in India, only digital will not really work, and only physical will also not really work. It has to be phygital. By phygital, what I really mean, I mean that physical and digital banks will have to continuously keep investing across both of these channels really. अगर आप नहीं इन्वेस्ट करोगे तो आप रूरल इंडिया, जो कि एक बहुत बड़ा बेस है, उसको मिस आउट कर रहे हो. और अगर आप डिजिटल में इन्वेस्ट नहीं करोगे तो अर्बन इंडिया है जहाँ पे लोग बैंक्स में नहीं आना चाहते हैं, आप उनको मिस आउट करोगे. अ परफेक्ट एग्जांपल ऑफ दिस इज इंडियाज टॉप प्राइवेट सेक्टर बैंक्स. इवन आफ्टर making 10,000 crores of profit in a quarter, it is still struggling with the digital platform that is there. Whereas on the other hand, it is investing very aggressively on the physical side of it. But the strategy that they are following, वो एनालिस्ट लोगों को समझ में नहीं आती है. If you go deep down and you understand, you look at SBI. One of the biggest niches that SBI has got is the door-to-door reach that SBI has got, and because of it, it has become a super franchise. Today, HDFC Bank, if it wants to become the number one bank in this country, it will have to invest in digital infrastructure. This is what the management has really understood. This is what I also understood by interacting with them, that they have a clear plan. The bank is undergoing a massive transformation, and they have a clear plan that within 5 years they want to become the number one bank in this country. Of course, they are paying the price for it by with whatever is happening with the stock price, but that's okay. You will not become number one in this country by not doing things very differently, and they are adding a lot of branches. So in the near term, the cost to income could really inflate, which is really okay. But if you have a planned strategy, then look at the output. The output is this. At a point in Q4, when the system-wide deposit growth was at about 9%, HDFC Bank added 2.5 lakh crores of deposit, which was 19% growth. And that's the whole point of getting these branches in and investing in these branches. If they get a deposit at about 3.8, 3.9%, they are well off by lending at 8.2, 8.3%, and that really works out. So in lending, the strategy is very, very important. Physical strategy will be the place to go to. That's the third point. The fourth point is, will lenders continue to create mass? I will disagree with Ravi Bhai here that I think that they will create huge amounts of wealth. almost as much as they had created in the last 25 years. Of course, the top banks where the valuation have already reached 3.5 times, वहाँ पे re-rating नहीं हो सकता है. That's pretty obvious, right? But as Aditya Puri always says, that the demand for banking in India will far outweigh the supply. If India wants to go from to a 5 trillion economy to a 10 trillion economy, you just have to look at China. China may all through 2000s, China kept pumping credit into the system, and once credit comes, it is a multiplier effect, and the whole economy really goes. So the broader point is credit will be the driver of the economy going forward, be it manufacturing, be it infrastructure. Nobody will does put their own money in. It all happens on credit. And what will really happen is some of the smaller private sector banks will graduate to become a larger private sector bank, and some of the larger private sector banks will graduate to become much larger private sector banks. Now people have to place their bets. Where do they want to really invest in? But the broader point is the opportunity has just started, in my opinion, because India is on a massive upward journey. And from that upward journey, you will see some companies which will see valuation re-rating from 0. 0.8 times or 1 times price to book to about 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There are new HDFCs that are going to get made. There are new Kotaks that are going to be made. But it will take certain amount of time for the market to understand who will be there and who will be not there. And that's what I wanted to say. And the last point that I wanted to say is this credit cycle is very cyclical. Market has priced in a lot for all of these financials. This cycle could continue at least for the next 12 to 36 months. I am quoting this from my interaction with Mr. Manish Chokani, who has been a veteran investor of about 40 years. He says this that the ingredients for a strong financial cycle are all there for the next 5 years. So he's very bullish for the next 5 years. But I feel the next 12 to 36 months will be the time when the new NPAs start to come in. And when the new NPAs will start to come in, the record ROAs and the ROEs that everybody is trying to report will fall. And once they eventually fall, the market will tend to realize that it is not as optimistic as it thought, as was the case in chemicals in 21. And then it will try to derate some of the financials which are not really good. In lending, underwriting standards are very, very important. Those banks who have exceptionally good underwriting standards, they will win in this cycle and go on to become huge wealth creators. Those who are chasing growth and mispricing loans will find that NPAs come back again and hit them again. So net, stay very cautious. Don't invest in very poor quality lenders, even though they are moving up to 3 times, 4 times, 5 times price to book, because eventually you will realize when the cycle turns who is swimming naked.
Thanks, Aditya. Ravikant, then Vineet, and then Sanam. Ravikant, you're still on mute.
Prince, I would request you to allow Vineet sir to speak first because my remark is a bit specific.
Yeah, Vineet sir, you can go next.
So, talking about NIMs, cost of funds, etc., while again SBI as a lender is a child of the government and proxy treasury India. So the cost of fund of SBI cannot be compared with any of the private sector banks. However, if we look at past 3 quarters of deposit data specifically, the CASA has been going down, while the only uptrend we have seen in the deposits is coming from term deposits. And most important point here is the best term rate deposits as of today is 2 years. So people are not, shifting their funds into savings and CASAs. They are shifting it towards the term deposit and locking the higher interest rate. So cost of funds is going to remain elevated for a considerable amount of time, while it will continue to pressurize NIM if somebody uh, does not give an importance to NIMs in this environment. And going forward, if interest rates come down while FD rates are not going down because people have booked 2 year FD, then probably we are in a hot soup, because we should not be focusing on a data where we can get detrimental towards operating profits, core banking operating profits, because cost of fund is something which is really important in pre-operating profits. Number one is that. Number two, I was not talking only about HDFC. So when I said 30%, 5% jump in cost of employees, I was talking about cost of employees per branch, not the total cost of employees. So when I say cost of employees per branch, when a branch is opened, employees are already hired. So in past 3 quarters, the cost of employees per branch has not increased for HDFC, and it has, however, increased this quarter itself. Why? Because the attrition rates in the market are exorbitant. Let's talk about HDFC. 35% jump in quarter on quarter. ICICI Bank is up 11% quarter on quarter in employee cost per branch. HDFC Bank, ICICI Bank, and Kotak is 13% up. Axis Bank is 10% up. IndusInd Bank is 7% up quarter on quarter. So employee cost is something which the industry has to work around, because if the employee churn is so much, I was reading somewhere that Kotak had a 50% attrition recently. So if employee churn is so much, and the employee cost continues to improve while NIMs continue to decrease, then probably we are not getting into a situation where we will see a lot of profitability bump up in next 3, 4, or at least 5, 7 quarters. However, I completely agree. Credit cycle is on a good side, and we will continue to have good loan growth, etc. But deposit is something where we are going to have a rough time. NIM is something we will have a rough time. And I completely agree. Banking in India is a brick and mortar business. It's a touch and feel business. ऑनलाइन बैंकिंग चलती है, लेकिन ब्रांच भी चाहिए अपने को, ठीक है? तो पॉइंट इज, अगर कहीं पर हम अच्छा कर रहे हैं तो कहीं पर हमें को मार भी पड़ सकती है. So we have to be very cautious. Let's not get into the narrative that everybody is going to do well. Lot of stuff in banking is dependent on interest rate cycle and the forex parity with dollar. If interest rates do not go up in India, probably we might see INR depreciation. And if INR depreciates, there is a further outflow of dollar. And everybody knows banking is a sector which is heavy FII invested, and we might not see the kind of historic valuations we have seen in past 10 years. So just be cautious around it. Let's not get into the narrative that good credit cycle, good profitability, good NIM, etc. Be on the ground. That's my take on this.
Yeah, Ravi.
Yeah, so in my opinion, I agree with both Aditya as well as Vineet sir. In my opinion, NIM and the importance of decline in NPAs and hence decline in the provisioning requirement both play significant factor in the overall revival of the entire banking sector which we see. But with those factors in my mind, there are certain pitfalls also, and these pitfalls are specifically for the banking part of the entire financial domain. So yes, in my opinion, tech will be a great disruptor. It's not about coming out as an outright winner, but the fact that if we are comparing as an investment proposition the banking sector per se, then the last banking cycle, where people made a good fortune, their tech was not this potent as it is today, with the likes of PV FinTech and then even Paytm and many others. Then second fact, pitfall which comes to my mind is that the current capex cycle in India is largely pulled by the government funding. That is by via fiscal deficit. The private sector credit uptake has been very muted so far, and it will be interesting to see because the at the macro level the expectation is that that government funding will gradually crowd in the private funding, private capex cycle as well, but it is yet to be seen, because until and unless that happens, the overall credit transmission in the economy, about which all of us are so gung ho, won't happen. Third is that, like, even for India, inflation has been like, dangling sword. And there are like several steps which have been already put in by the central bank, like, that increased CRR requirement with respect to 2000 rupee notes which have been deposited. So that will always be, like, an Achilles heel, because if the central bank decides to, give priority to, taming down onto inflation, overall liquidity available in the market will definitely be constrained. Then, apart from these three like points, the three pitfalls which comes to my mind regarding banking sector, like, we need to be cognizant of the fact that, like in many forums and articles, etc., we have seen this discussion that is the current bull run or rally, whatever you want to say, is it qualitatively different from the previous one which we saw in 2008 and 9? Okay, and which, like, as Aditya very well pointed out, and even to an extent Vineet sir also pointed out, and a couple of other speakers earlier, I think Ravi sir also pointed out that yes, the current like run up is qualitatively different. And one of the pointers which I would like to point is that the current corporate debt to GDP ratio is at decadal low. So the current run up is much more robust, as a result of which it does make a case for overall re-rating of the banking sector as a whole. And from these different perspective, we need to be rather probabilistic rather than, deterministic कि ऐसा हो ही होगा या फिर वैसा ही होगा. Okay, and because until unless we have that kind of probabilistic perspective, we won't be able to identify opportunities which are available in reality, but we will be running behind opportunities which are actually there in our heads. So this is my like 2 cents on the discussion so far.
Thanks, Ravi. So before coming to Ravi, sir, Sanam also has a point to make. So Sanam, I would request you to take unlimited time and please speak your point.
Thank you very much. So I'll not introduce myself. I'll just get on to the data part of it, right? So it's not countering anybody on the entire discussion, but it's my perspective, and I have the right to be wrong. So my first thing is that everybody is discussing about interest and everything, but do we have a relation about interest rate parity theorem? Pound was 95, which is 105. One of my fellow mates said that it's FIIs which make the difference, right? 95 की चीज अब आज 105 की हो गई है. एक पाउंड एक आदमी भेजता आज से एक 6 महीने पहले, आज वो 105 रुपये उसके ले रहा है, राइट? हम लोग आइसोलेशन में, वी कैन नॉट टॉक इन आइसोलेशन, राइट? कोडैक वॉज अ वेरी गुड कंपनी, but isolation may they kept on making cameras, and cameras got replaced by the mobile phones, right? So it is sometimes it's external factors also which work, right? Second thing is somebody was talking about NPAs, right? So NPAs का नॉर्म इंडिया में है 90 डेज, 90 दिन तक, 3 क्वार्टर तक अगर ब्याज ना आए या प्रिंसिपल ना ब्याज ना आए तो वो एनपीए हो जाता है. अभी इतनी ज़्यादा फंडिंग हुई पिछले टाइम में, उसके बाद उसको जेस्टेशन पीरियड मिला 270 से 360 दिन का, तो 1 से 1.5 साल तो कहीं नहीं गया जिसमें कि एनपीए आने वाले हैं अभी अगले कुछ साल में. तो उसका उसका कोई रीज़न नहीं है. somebody said कि it's a we are finding reasons. I perfectly agree. I've been in market from last 22 years. I perfectly agree कि जब वो बढ़ रहे हैं तो हम उसके रीजंस फाइंड आउट कर रहे हैं. एनपीए आज आएंगे, कल आएंगे, परसों आएंगे, 1 साल तक नहीं आएंगे, ऑब्वियसली नहीं आएंगे. आज एक प्रोजेक्ट है, आज नया प्रोजेक्ट लॉन्च हुआ है, उसकी लास्ट डिस्पर्समेंट आज से 12 महीने 18 महीने बाद होनी है, उसके बाद उसको 90 दिन का टाइम मिलना है, तो वो वैसे ही 2 साल पार हो गए. देखो, in a country like India, where population is increasing at the rate of 0.8 0.9% annually, चीज़ें पॉजिटिव ही होंगी. देखो, वो जो एक स्पेसिफिक प्रॉब्लम है ना पॉपुलेशन की या कस्टमर्स की, या जैसे लॉर्ड जेएम कीन्स कहते थे एग्रीगेट डिमांड की, वो इंडिया में नहीं आने वाली, राइट? मैं बाहर रहता हूँ, ठीक है, यहाँ पे आई सी देर आर विलेजेस जहाँ पे जो विलेजेस डिस्टॉर्ट हो रही हैं, जहाँ पे लोग नहीं हैं, पॉपुलेशन ख़त्म हो रही हैं, पीपल आर गेटिंग मोटिवेटेड टू हैव किड्स। इंडिया में वो प्रॉब्लम नहीं है, वो नहीं आने वाली। थर्ड पॉइंट इज, किसी ने बोला कि एफडीआर की कॉस्ट हमारी फिक्स होती है। एफडीआर की कॉस्ट फिक्स होती है, लेकिन अगर आपका रेपो रेट कम हो जाएगा और उसके बाद एफडीआर की कॉस्ट इंक्रीज हो जाएगी तो 0.5-0.6% लगना है ना पेनल्टी, यही तो लगना है एफडीआर को प्री मैच्योर कराने का। अब मतलब मैं एक 5.5% की एफडी पे हूँ और रेपो रेट डिक्रीज होता जा रहा है, तो 5.5 से अगर 7.5 ब्याज हो जाएगा तो मैं 5.5 की जगह 4.5 लेके 6.5 की एफडी करा लूंगा ना। मैं इंतजार थोड़ी करूंगा, इमोशनली अटैच थोड़ी रहूंगा कि मैंने 4.5 में 5.5 में कराई थी, भाई साहब मैं तो नहीं कराऊंगा उसको डिसकंटिन्यू। नेक्स्ट पॉइंट इज, somebody was talking about the quality of assets, right? कि क्वालिटी ऑफ एसेट्स, क्वालिटी ऑफ एसेट, बजाज फाइनेंस आज की डेट में आपको ओपन क्रेडिट देता है, आपको कोलेटरल नहीं लेना, आपको कुछ नहीं देना, आपको डायरेक्टली बजाज फाइनेंस के पोर्टल पे जाना, अपना सीबीएल डेटा देना है। तो ये तो बिगर कॉज ऑफ कंसर्न है कि अगर पीएसयू के पास लोग आ रहे हैं जिनका सीबीएल डेटा नहीं है, और प्लस मतलब आई एम टर्मिंग इट एज एनबीएफसी। अगर एनबीएफसी एक आउटराइट आपको बिना ब्याज के या कम ब्याज के या बिना कोलेटरल के पैसा दे रहा है, तो मैं तो उस आदमी से पूछूंगा कि भाई अगर आपको 10% पे, 8% पे या 9% पे यूटिलाइज फंड पे पैसा मिल रहा है, उसके बाद भी आप कोलेटरल देके 12% ब्याज पे क्यों पैसा उठा रहे हो? क्या परेशानी है आपकी, कहाँ पे कंसर्न है आपको? मैं उससे सवाल जरूर पूछूंगा कि क्यों क्यों आप बजाज फाइनेंसिंग ले रहे। अगर मुझे एक पैसा मिल रहा है, मैं यूटिलाइज फंड पे, यूटिलाइज लिमिट पे मेरे को 7%, 8% पे, 9% पे यूटिलाइज फंड पे, ओके, यूटिलाइज फंड में बात बात बोल रहा हूँ, क्योंकि जितना आपने पैसा यूज़ करा है उसके बाद आपकी कोई कमिटमेंट कॉस्ट नहीं है, आपकी कोई वैल्यूएशन कॉस्ट नहीं है, जो आपने एसेट दिया कोलेट्रल उसका आपने रिवैल्यूएशन नहीं कराया, उसका आपने इंश्योरेंस नहीं कराया, उसको भी तो ऐड करेंगे ना हम, वो भी तो सारी कॉस्ट है। अगर आपने कोलेट्रल दिया, उसका 0.5% या 0.6% आपने कॉस्ट इनकर करा, तो वो कॉस्ट कहाँ जाएगा उसको भी तो पूछेंगे ना। मैं एक आदमी से जरूर पूछूंगा, भाई तूने 9.5% में बैंक से पैसा क्यों लिया, जब 11.5% पे तेरे को बजाज फाइनेंस में मिल सकता था या किसी भी एनबीएफसी से मिल सकता था, जहां पे तेरे को कोई कोलेटरल नहीं देना था, जहां पे तुझे इंश्योरेंस कॉस्ट नहीं देनी थी, जहां पे तुझे गारंटी कमीशन नहीं देनी थी डीआईजीसीसी की, जो वट एवर इज एप्लीकेबल अगर है कि नहीं है उस स्पेसिफिक बैंक में, मैं उससे जरूर पूछूंगा कि तेरी इंटेंट खराब है, ऐसा क्यों कर रहा है तू। नेक्स्ट इज डिजिटल के बारे में किसी ने पूछा। रिलायंस इंडस्ट्रीज में हर 1 लाख पॉपुलेशन पे जियो पॉइंट होते हैं, राइट, जो कि आपको फुली डिजिटली लिटरलाइज कराते हैं। तो क्या हम ये बात कर रहे हैं कि आने वाले टाइम में जहाँ 1 लाख पॉपुलेशन पे डिजिटली लिटरलाइज पॉपुलेशन होगी, जो अपने आप अपने जिनके पास 500,000 रुपए वाले फ़ोन होंगे, जो अपने आप अपना मोबाइल रिचार्ज कर सकते हैं, वो डिजिटली लिटरल नहीं होंगे? क्या हम ये बात कर रहे हैं? उसके बाद हम बात करते हैं, किसी ने बोला एम्प्लॉय कॉस्ट को लेकर, राइट, कि एम्प्लॉय कॉस्ट बढ़ गई। एम्प्लॉय कॉस्ट बढ़ गई, आई अग्री, पर किसी ने देखा उस एम्प्लॉय कॉस्ट में ईसॉप कॉस्ट कितनी है? ईसॉप कॉस्ट भी तो देखो, वो जो टॉप पे लोग बैठे हैं उन्होंने तो अपने आप चुपचाप अपने नाम पे ईसॉप ले लिए, और वो ईसॉप जो है एम्प्लॉय कॉस्ट में ऐड हो गए। वो तो टॉप है में ना, उन्होंने तो डाउन द लाइन किसी को कुछ भी नहीं दिया, अपने आप ले लिए, लेके बैठ गए, उसकी वेस्टिंग होती रहेगी 10%, 20%, 25%, आज की डेट में ऐड हो गए, हमने एम्प्लॉय कॉस्ट को ऐड कर लिया। नेक्स्ट इज, हम बात कर रहे हैं इन्फ्लेशन की, राइट। इन्फ्लेशन इन अ कंट्री लाइक इंडिया अभी भी कुछ नहीं है। इन अ कंट्री लाइक यूके, इन अ कंट्री लाइक यूएस, हम लोग ऑलरेडी सीपीआई पे 100% इन्फ्लेशन पे पहुंच चुके हैं एक साल में। 100, और 100% भी मैं कम बोल रहा हूं, मतलब 400 ग्राम चिकन जो है 1 पाउंड 35 पाउंड का आता था, जो आज 3.5 पाउंड का है। दूध 70 पेंस का आता था, जो आज 2.5 पाउंड का है। भिंडी 1250 रुपए किलो है, जो 300 रुपए किलो आती थी, 3 पाउंड की आती थी, आज 12.5। तो अभी तो हम इन्फ्लेशन पे पहुंचे ही नहीं ना, उसको भी तो देखना पड़ेगा जो बाहर से पैसा आ रहा है। जब सारा कुछ ही बाहर से इन्फ्लुएंस होना है, देखो पंजाब की हम सब लोग बात करते हैं, पंजाब में एग्रीकल्चर बहुत अच्छा है, बहुत अच्छा है, बहुत अच्छा है। कभी किसी ने समझने की कोशिश करी क्यों अच्छा है, ऐसा क्या हुआ पंजाब में? मैं पंजाब जाता हूं, मुझे तो कुछ नहीं दिखता वहां पे ऐसा, बट कभी किसी ने समझने की कोशिश करी? दी ओनली फैक्टर इज कि जो भी एनआरआई रेमिटेंस होती है वो नॉन टैक्सेबल हो, उसके लिए वहाँ पे एक एग्रीकल्चर इनकम टैक्स रिटर्न फाइल हो जाती है और हम कहते हैं कि वहाँ पे इनकम बहुत अच्छी है। वही 400 मरले का, आई वुड से दैट, मतलब 20 एकड़ का प्लॉट एक आदमी के लिए 10 लाख की रिटर्न देता है, एक आदमी के लिए 1 करोड़ की रिटर्न देता है। इट इज़ जस्ट बिकॉज द रीज़न कि इन उस पर इनकम टैक्स नहीं होता है, इसलिए हम बात करते रहते हैं। नेक्स्ट इज, यस आई फुली एग्री टू समबडी हु सेड साइक्लिकल। देखो, इट इज साइक्लिकल, इसलिए हम उसके रीजंस फाइंड आउट कर रहे हैं और उन रीजंस को फाइंड आउट करके उसको टेंजेबलाइज करने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं। इट इज जस्ट साइक्लिकल, नथिंग एल्स। स्टेट बैंक वही है, यूको बैंक वही है, कैनरा बैंक वही है, आज से 5 साल पहले भी वही था, आज भी वही है। हम सिर्फ उसके रीजंस फाइंड आउट कर रहे हैं क्योंकि वो ग्रो कर गया, हम सब बातें कर रहे हैं। अब उसके बाद किसी ने बोला एसबीआई की कॉस्ट ऑफ फंड बहुत कम थी। एसबीआई की कॉस्ट ऑफ फंड तो कम होगी ना, क्योंकि अगर किसी को भी कॉन्ट्रैक्ट लेना है एनएचएआई का, तो इसके एसबीआई में एफडीआर करानी है, उसके पास चॉइस ही नहीं है। अगर रेजिमेंटल फंड लेना है, किसी के पास रेजिमेंट में फंड है, किसी भी आर्मी का फंड है जो कि एक्सेसिव फंड होता है, उसके पास कोई चॉइस नहीं है, क्योंकि लैंसडाउन में या वेलिंगटन में या रुद्रप्रयाग में एसबीआई के अलावा किसी की ब्रांच नहीं होगी, वहां आईसीआई एचडीएफसी की ब्रांच नहीं होगी। उसके पास कोई चॉइस नहीं है, उसको एफडीआर, उस रेजिमेंट को एफडीआर वहीं कराना पड़ेगा। वो ई एफडीआर नहीं कराएगा तो उसकी कॉस्ट तो कम रहेगी रहेगी, उसके पास कोई चॉइस नहीं है। और एचडीएफसी में ऑटो मेच्योर एचडीएफसी की ऑप्शन है, ऑनलाइन एफडीआर की ऑप्शन है, जो कि इन नेशनलाइज्ड बैंक्स में अवेलेबल नहीं है। उसके बाद पॉपुलेशन ग्रोथ जो बहुत बड़ा फैक्टर है इंडिया में, जो रहेगा ही रहेगा। और आप बाहर के कंट्रीज में आओ, वहाँ पे न्यू टेस्ट इशू होता है। हम लोग वहाँ पे आते हैं, हमें मैकडी मिलता है, हम लोग खाने जाते हैं। यहाँ पे आप किसी के पास जाओ, अगर उसने भुना गोश्त खाना है तो भुना गोश्त ही खाएगा, उसको आप 10 चीज़ें फ्री दे दो वो नहीं खाएगा। तो पॉपुलेशन टेस्ट नहीं है, वो ऑलरेडी मेच्योर हो चुके हैं। थैंक्स इज नेक्स्ट इज दैट वी आर फाइंडिंग ओनली रिकोर्स फॉर ग्रोथ। दैट इज ओनली कि वी आर फाइंडिंग रीजंस कि ऐसा क्यों हुआ, अभी क्यों हुआ। मेरा कहना यह है कि निफ्टी या एच डी एफ सी या जितने भी बैंकिंग है, एक देर वॉज अ वेरी इंटेलिजेंट स्टेटमेंट विद समबडी कि फाइनेंशियल, देखो फाइनेंशियल जो है ना वो दुनिया का सबसे पुराना व्यापार है। उस व्यापार में वो व्यापार तब से चला आ रहा है जब कोई नहीं था। ब्याज पे रकम हमेशा से चलती है, वो ब्याज पे कम पे आएगी ज्यादा पे जाएगी, दैट इज नो रॉकेट साइंस, वो हमेशा चलेगी, वो दुनिया में रहेगी रहेगी, उसमें कोई चेंज नहीं करने वाला। लेकिन हमको ये भी देखना पड़ेगा कि हमारे पड़ोस वाले देश में, हमारे पड़ोस वाले गांव में, हमारे पड़ोस वाले महल्ले में जो ब्याज पे देने वाला आदमी है उसका ब्याज क्या है, क्या वो ब्याज कम है, ज्यादा है, ऊपर है, नीचे है। मैं आज कहता हूं कि अगर पाउंड 95 से 105 हो गया, या डॉलर 60 से 80 हो गया, 78 हो गया इस केस में भी, तो 25-30% निफ्टी की ग्रोथ तो सिर्फ करेंसी अप्रिसिएशन से आ गई ना। अभी 30% तो बढ़ा ही नहीं है, इंटरेस्ट कहाँ बढ़ा है वो। 30% बढ़ने तो दो, उसके बाद बात करेंगे ना। 30% बढ़ने के बाद तब हम लेवल प्लेइंग फील्ड पे आएंगे कि आज हम उस लेवल पे आ चुके हैं जब हम बेस्ट ऑफ द रेस्ट ऑफ द वर्ल्ड से कंपेयर कर रहे हैं। अभी तो हम उसी से पीछे चल रहे हैं। जब तक हम उसके बराबर नहीं आएंगे तब तक हम बात नहीं कर सकते। वी आर नॉट ऑन अ सिचुएशन टू टॉक एट दैट पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम, टिल दैट पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम वी रीच देयर। So my point
Thank
is
you.
that, yeah. So
Sanam, I'll stop you in want of time. I'll come to you again.
you
So
can
Ravi had his hand raised. So Ravi, over to you. Ravi is still mute.
Okay, sorry. Yes. Yeah, few interesting point to make. I'll make few points and then my daughter is calling for dinner also. Uh, देखो, एक जो चीज अपने बार बार बोल रहे हैं ना कि देयर वाज समथिंग लाइक डिपॉजिट एंड कासा इज नॉट ग्रोइंग, कासा स्पेशली इज नॉट ग्रोइंग इन द कंट्री। उसके लिए ना वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग डेटा पॉइंट इज say among the salaried class, as you see the parallel increase of among only the salaried class, parallel increase of use of credit card, this can be easily juxtaposed to the saving amount which we keep on the banking side. अभी के दिन में say people who are there on this call itself from India, most of the people will be using this mechanism कि सैलरी आने पे जो भी ईएमआई, कार और होम ईएमआई वो पे हो जाए। बैंक में सेविंग का जो अमाउंट है वो मिनिमल है एंड वॉट एवर स्पेंड आई हैव ऑन द मंथली साइड इट इज बिन डन थ्रू क्रेडिट कार्ड्स most of the time. Salaried class, urban pocket, this is the mechanism they are seeing, and hence CASA growth will be lower than the deposit growth in the country for near future. Pehla point. Second point, we talked about digital versus physical, and I guess Aditya mentioned about it has to be combination of the both. And my thought is where it will be a difference is say urban pockets which is well penetrated 8-10 years back. Now what you will have is जैसे मैं I stay in some pocket of Chandivali. If in that pocket ICICI or HDFC and in the housing society there are 2,000 flats. Okay, they will have a small पहले जैसे जो 2,500 3,000 square feet के offices खुलते थे, they will not go for that kind of ticket size of offices. Open at 1,000 square feet offices. वहाँ पे एक टेलर रहेगा, एक अकाउंटेंट रहेगा, 5 6 7 8 लोगों का स्टाफ, so that if you have any problem or you want to have any resolution for some of your query, then you go there and do it. Otherwise, we generally don't go to branches on the urban side. Rural side, you again don't need that large branches because you will not have a full-fledged service branch because you won't need to sell all kind of insurance or AMC products. Full-fledged branches जो urban pockets में खुले थे 8-10 साल पहले, that was because you are doing so much amount of cross selling. Those kind of cross selling is not required on the urban rural pockets. You will have branches. The smaller branches is because of different reason. We were talking about something on the employee cost. विनीत एक चीज चेक कर लेना आई थिंक ना जैसे जो सैलरी का है ना increment comes in Q1 and bonus comes in Q1 might happen in some of the banks. Because of that, if you are witnessing QOQ some changes or maybe last year when COVID was there, the bonus was not paid well. So that can be a changes, but otherwise I don't think banking side may and especially on the branch banking side, the salary have moved that dramatically. It might have moved on the head office side, but not on the branch banking side. Other point which someone wants to say something? Yeah. Other point what I guess Sanam was making is about the bonuses and all. Bonuses for the banking is large when you see for the individual one, but when it's consolidated on the complete PNL and or even on the employee cost of the bank, it's not that very large. At least of ICICI, I know they don't offer the bonus ESOPs on free. They have some 600, 500, whatever that derived cost is. So it's not given free. I'm not aware of all the other banks, but I presume most of the bank will have some intrinsic value which will be lower than the current price, but it will not be given free of cost. So there will be a vesting period 3-4 years. That is a different issue. But otherwise, also, if you see the PNL after 2000, I guess 18 or somewhere, the ESOP cost has to be passed through with the PNL. Earlier, it was a outside item. Now it's been passed through. But I don't think ESOPs is given at face value. It has to be given at some kind of intrinsic value calculation. Other thing which we are discussing about the relevance of NIM and all. Look, my understanding is, and that comes from different interaction which or inputs which came from large domestic and international investor is simple. In this sector, people look for 4-5 kind of pillar. One would be the AUM growth with and the context of AUM growth. If the AUM growth is more retail side or the AUM growth is more corporate side, the retail side AUM will go given more positivity. Then you have what kind of other operating leverage you have on the banking side, which tells you PPOP पे आपका AUM पे कितना बन रहा है. Asset quality and final ROE. ये 3-4 का जो pillar है, that decide what the valuation is. And also what also gives comfort someone who is invested for 8-10 years is how much kind of disaster you had in the cycle. If there are banks who very well when the bull run is there, and then when you have a problem, you will again see that there is some kind of problem coming to them. So there is that kind of reason also there. While the valuation is not given comparable to the larger ones. Other thing, I'm not sure. I was thinking about more few points, but I guess I lost it. Vineet had wanted to add something. Vineet, you can go ahead.
हाँ, सो रवि मैंने देखा तो नहीं है बिकॉज if it has to be compared, it has to be compared with the pre-COVID quarter 1 numbers. क्योंकि अगर बोनस जो है कोविड पीरियड में शायद मिले नहीं होंगे, और हो सकता है पिछले साल भी ना मिले हों. आई कंप्लीटली एग्री टू दैट. सो अगर नंबर कंपेयर करना पड़ेगा तो वो फिर Q1 ऑफ प्री कोविड ईयर्स का कंपेयर करना पड़ेगा. So I buy that point. Second thing, यार मेरे लिए ना for an investable bank, two things are really important. One is growth, and second is operating efficiency. Operating efficiency में I think you have already covered. ROE अच्छा होना चाहिए, ROA अच्छा होना चाहिए, cost of fund ठीक होना चाहिए, NIM अच्छा होना चाहिए, मतलब PNL के जितने metrics हैं, और बैलेंस शीट अच्छी ग्रोथ.
और विनीत होता क्या है ना, ये सारी चीजें ना एक साथ अच्छी होती है. वेन योर क्रेडिट
हाँ
कॉस्ट का आपका आप एक बैड साइकिल से आते हो तो आपका क्रेडिट कॉस्ट कम आता है. आपका क्रेडिट कॉस्ट कम होगा तो मैनेजमेंट इन्वेस्टर सबको ही पुश करते हैं आप ग्रोथ ज्यादा लेके आओ. एंड इट ऑल बॉइल्स डाउन टू हायर आरओई एंड हायर वैल्यूएशन.
नो नो
सो
आई एग्री रवि, कंप्लीटली एग्री. तो वो सारी चीजें ना कई बार इकट्ठी नहीं भी होती हैं. फॉर एग्जांपल एक्सिस और इंडसइंड कभी भी अच्छी ग्रोथ नंबर्स नहीं लेकर आते हैं मार्केट में. दे आर वेरी कॉम्प्लेक्सेंट नाउ. और एक्सिस का तो इस बार शायद डिपॉजिट या पता नहीं, हाँ डिपॉजिट बेस भी कम हुआ है Q-on-Q, हालांकि किसी और बैंक का नहीं हुआ है. तो पॉइंट इज, मेरे को ग्रोथ चाहिए इन द बिजनेस, नंबर 1. मेरे को एफिशिएंसी चाहिए इन द बिजनेस, कॉस्ट टू इनकम रेशियो इंप्रूव होनी चाहिए, हमारी ऑपरेटिंग मैट्रिक्स अच्छे होने चाहिए. और अगर ये सब चीजें फॉलो इन कर रही हैं, उसके बाद वैल्यूएशन आती है कि वैल्यूएशन कितनी मिल रही है. अगर वैल्यूएशन ही ये सब अच्छी होने के बाद भी वैल्यूएशन मेरे को 4 टाइम्स 5 टाइम्स प्राइस टू बुक मिल रही है, देयर इज नो पॉइंट एंटरिंग इनटू इट, राइट? तो पॉइंट इज सब कुछ एक साथ अगर हो जाता है ना तो फिर फायदा नहीं है घुसने का भी. पॉइंट इज, अपॉर्चुनिटी तब आती है जब आप एक स्ट्रेस सिचुएशन में होते हो एंड यू कैन फोरसी कि यहाँ से ग्रोथ ट्रैजेक्टरी है, यहाँ से टर्न अराउंड ट्रैजेक्टरी है इन NIM, यहाँ से टर्न अराउंड ट्रैजेक्टरी है इन कॉस्ट ऑफ फंड्स, यहाँ से टर्न अराउंड ट्रैजेक्टरी है इन NPAs, and hence my valuation will catch up in the future. That is a investing thesis. But right now, today's scenario is only one factor is there, which is my NPA cycle is very good and my advances growth is very good. Rest of the factors are not playing with in tandem with the investing thesis, and that's why. Plus, the liquidity problem is another issue in itself. कल को FIs ने पुल करना शुरू कर दिया पैसा, तो we will move nowhere. जितना मर्जी अच्छा profitability दिखा लें, जो मर्जी कर लें, but yes, in longer run, we can see good numbers and good share price appreciations also. But I have started saying this since past 3-4 quarters now. In long run, everyone is dead. So point is, हमको थोड़ा सा देखना भी पड़ता है कहाँ शॉर्ट टर्म हेडविंड है, कहाँ शॉर्ट टर्म टेलविंड है. उस हिसाब से you should not enter at a point when you can see there are some issues going to come up.
All right, Ravikant. Okay.
One thing actually, just before I forget, we were talking about AUM growth now. This is some different kind of thought. Say 15 years back, the ratio of service in the GDP was less than 50%. Today, it's more than 60%. So there is two things which is there, and apart from lending to the private manufacturer and infra, there is good portion of agri also. When you are trying to project a growth for the private sector, you have to have a back of mind thought that private sector, the larger one, are reluctant primarily to give very aggressive on the agri side or the infra side. So that portion they don't want to be aggressive. The agri side they do, it's mostly to meet that 40% PSL requirement. Apart from that, if you move towards more service related economic growth, the intensity which can be happening on the credit to GDP can only be supported by retail, which is happening in the US. But India is still, I still see that the young ones are very keen to move towards the borrowing side But the larger ticket size, the pocket of the middle class, which still, if they are at that 30-40 bracket, still I see that there is that much amount of reluctance for borrowing for the consumption need. Borrowing is fine for the home and the car requirement, the lumpy requirement, but the asset life is also very larger one. But that 40-year pocket, I believe still borrowing for consumption is still they don't want to do that, but that is prevalent in the younger ones. So that also some thought has to be given that if you're manufacturing, though government want to move it again back from 2015 to 25, but it will be coming with its time. So if that ratio has changed from what it used to be, so that also has to be there in the modeling purpose. Yeah.
Thanks, Ravi. Ravikant, you can go, and then Falak and Aditya have been waiting since long. After Ravi, Aditya or Falak can go in any manner.
Yeah. So, am I audible?
Yeah.
Ah, So, I think we have had a very fair discussion on, like banking part as well as of finance, and very detailed discussion whether, factors like NIM, etc., matter to what extent. So, I will take an opportunity to break down this entire spectrum into three parts. First is microfinance, and then the other one is retail banking, and the third one being DFI. So, and I will try to, add a few points with respect to each one of them. While microfinance as a business has an immense potential and a total addressable market which yet needs to be tapped, it is one of the sectors which is where the aspect of cyclicality is extreme. So that's a pitfall, and it has very high susceptibility to any, politico regulatory, framework which in which we live. The second being that consumer banking, retail banking, as we call it. So I think enough of discussion has been had, what will be the path going into the future. But one thing we need to focus in banking particularly is that since cyclicality is the norm of the business, and we see that there is a lot of focus on going into consumer lending, consumption lending basically. And yeah, there are very specific reasons for it, but at the same time it does create a very niche opportunity for institutional investors, DFIs, I'm pointing out. And there is an entire brigade of institutions which are gradually coming up. Again, I will quote few names here. I may not be invested in them, but they need to be probed in properly to find out the avenues of opportunities, because in my opinion there is not much value in getting confused with macroeconomic discussion when we are trying to focus on to find pockets of investable opportunities. So we have in this cycle we have seen institutions firms like Ugrow Capital doing pretty good, which specializes in financing MSMEs, and they are also in agreement with several banks for co-lending, because these banks have a norm, like priority sector lending norm, in which certain percentage of their credit needs to flow to specific sectors. So you have that. Then there are pockets of opportunities of existing financial institutions where there is change in management, and as a result of which overall working of that particular institution is experiencing a change, not just working but even their overall portfolio composition is witnessing a change. So you have in that category L&T Finance and all can be categorized in that category. Then further, as I pointed out very clearly, the DFI aspect, because let us not forget the fact that entire capex cycle, which is we are witnessing right now, it has been propelled by government expenditure, and the kind of outlays we have by railways or power companies, that's phenomenal, that's huge. So, in that regard, firms like IRFC, PFC, they need to be probed. I'm not saying buy or sell or anything, but just have a look at it, because one discerning, thought which I have gauged by going through various spaces and articles, and even interacting with industry veterans, that the pendulum in banking somehow has accentuated towards consumer banking alone. सबको क्रेडिट कार्ड बेचना है, कार लोन बेचना है, ये करना है, वो करना है, एंड whenever the pendulum goes to one particular extreme, the opportunity is created at the other extreme. And that is what I meant, when I pointed that, we need to question one thing very, in a pensive manner, that is the sector as a whole, going for a re-rating? Is the, overall financial, uh, uh, like uh, financial quality of India Inc. is different from what we have witnessed in the past? Because cycles will be definitely there, but as a economy we keep growing, the baseline of that cycle will keep shifting horizontally upward. We need to focus on that if we are actually trying to focus on this sector from a long term perspective. If we are here, if one is looking at for a quarter or two or three, then it's very different. But we need to keep both the aspects, as Vineet bhai very promptly pointed, that in the long run we are all dead. So, but at the same time, we need to keep a perspective of both, the short term opportunities as well as the long term story, which is, playing out. So that's 2 cents from me, from my side, Prince.
Yeah. So we Falak and then Aditya maybe.
Yeah. Uh, Thank you. I have listened to many of the comments by various speakers. All of them are correct to some extent, not wrong to some extent. Let me put it in my perspective. Let me put it in a way that how I will be looking at it from the investing point of view. Say, investing in see, if you all know that banks and NBFC are in lending business, and lending business is high debt business. And in this business, if you are investing, you need to think from the perspective of how I am not going to blow up my capital in any of the investment. So that is the first metric. I am telling you how to how I am filtering all these companies for investment purpose. So first, what I will do, I will filter out that in which companies I will not blow up my capital. Second, I will never target a niche NBFC or a bank which is catering to specific segments like housing finance, like microfinance, like credit card. Uh, that some sector that requires extreme intelligence and expertise on cyclical aspect, but I would prefer to have an uh, diversified diversified exposure. So say how will so let me put it in a practical way. So how will I not blow my capital? I will always prefer top two banks, private banks. They are in regulatory framework too big to fail banks. So there will be extra layer of supervision on them always. Uh, so I know, excuse me. So that is how I look at it, the point of view of blowing off my capital. Second, uh, these banks have exposure in various segments. They do cater credit card, they do cater microfinance, they do cater all the other areas of business. So in a way, I am getting exposure to those areas via these banks. Third, if the economies grow, the financial, all the aspect, banking, non-banking, investment, insurance, all the areas of the economy grow up. So indirectly, I am getting exposure to all those areas by investing in these top banks. Fourth, uh, irrespective of interest rate goes up or goes out down, these banks have a very high degree of moat. Please note here that I am referring only banks. I am not referring to NBFC, even if it is a very top tier, well reputed, well run NBFC. Because I find this is specific to my analysis. I find that in NBFC, if there is something wrong happens to that NBFC, even a rumor can blow up their borrowing capacity from the from the by way of NCDs and all. Their major borrowings comes from that segment. So if any rumor or anything happens to it, happens to the NBFC, the tap immediately stops, which is not in the case of banks. Just a second. 2 मिनट बका आयो. हाँ. So this is not in the case of banks because uh, they have the mode of CASA. They have deposits. So that tap won't turn off immediately. These things we have seen in the last few years in the NBFC as well as in the banks, which have blown up. Okay, so third, if the interest rate goes up or goes down, even say if it goes up, then the good borrowers from the low rated NBFC will migrate to the large banks in order to get a lower rate of uh, lower rate of interest on the loans. Same is the case with in the lower interest rate scenario. I will not prefer a metric of growth all the time. So though growth is by naturally embedded in many of the banks, but I will not consider growth as the primary criteria for selection. I will consider safety of capital, their balance sheet strength, their historic performance. This is what I will mostly prefer. No doubt there will be debate on the branch versus tech and all. By the way, if you must be knowing that ICICI Bank has 1 crore non-ICICI Bank customer in their environment. Tell me a tech company which can do that at this scale. So by this they can convert those into their customers. They are converting it actually. They are cross-selling their products to them. So if you consider yourself as a customer both in the case of deposit as well as in the borrower, would you swap to a what you call high rated borrower? No, you will always prefer low cost borrower. Also, will you compromise your safety of capital in pursuit of say UI, a better user interface of any other SFB or a small banks? No, you might play with it as a payment gateway, but you will not deploy your large capital over there. Large capital will always stay with best banks. This is how normal tendency work. So my preference will always be to invest in only best banks, top banks, which are highly regulated by RBI, which have excellent past track records in all the aspects. Unless you are very sure of what you are investing, uh, I believe one should restrict. There could be say short-term compression in margins, short-term spike in cost. That can be there in any banks, but this is part and parcel of the business. But if you are willing to invest for the longer term, you should avoid all these things. A shorter term compression in margin and increase in cost due to say expansion of branches, recruitment of employees, or anything is the short term phenomena. But in the long run, you will know that this will lead to increase in sale. Also, the gestation period of a small bank or a new bank is around 1.5 to 2 years, whereas the gestation period of the HDFC or an ICICI won't be that high. It will be less than 1 year or 1 year, I believe. I don't have a data to back that, but this is my thinking because it is a well-known bank. Uh, they don't face issue with marketing, so the gestation period will naturally be low. So temporary there will be headwinds, tailwinds, but if you are looking to invest in a banking sector, I would prefer that a large majority of investors is better off investing in the top private banks which are highly governed, highly regulated, have a very good track record, and a history of maintaining low NPA irrespective of whatever the environment is. Unless you are very sure, like I said, unless you are very sure in what you are investing, I would leave it here to that you should invest in only top tier banks without uh, losing your without worrying about losing your capital, that too in a basket approach. Like you should not invest in only one bank. You spread it out your risk across multiple banks, top multiple banks, not NBFC, only banks. So
Thanks.
that was what my investment, from the point of view of investment, that was what my thinking is. Now that is from that's for from my side. I will transfer to Prince.
Thanks, Falak. So before coming to Parth, we'll listen to Aditya. And Aditya, like I know, we are not here to name any companies, but again, broadly, which investable pockets you see at this point in time before coming to Parth?
Yeah. So I've listened very patiently. Now I will give you a master
Uh,
class in how.
Sorry to interrupt, Aditya ji.
Please go ahead, Farag bhai.
Just a second. Sorry to interrupt. Actually, hello. Yeah, I need to.
Yes, go ahead.
I got some work here. Actually, कुछ काम आ गया urgent है. So I
Fine,
need
fine.
to take a leave here.
Thank you,
Uh,
Falak, for joining today.
Thanks, Farag bhai.
Thank you
Thank you so
everyone for
much.
listening to me. Do share your feedback if any.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks,
Aditya.
Farag. Yeah, so I will now give you the master class. Over the last 1 hour, we have been stuck on very small and minute points, which are, in my opinion, as I have said before, deposit rate going up, going down, NIM going up, going down, or all of those are very cyclical factors which over a period of time normalize and do not matter. One of the most important things that matters in a bank was touched by nobody and only Falak Bhai touched it, is the ability of the management to duck all the NPAs. That's where the valuation expansion really happens, and you find a 5 times price to book or a 7 times price to book, as you have seen with one of the top private sector banks in this country. Let me give you some examples. The examples start from here. Back in 2008, Uday Kotak had a lot of problems in his lending, and he learned from that. So what he did, the first point that he did is he said, I will never go only unsecured lending. I will go secured and unsecured. A very, very basic and a commonsensical thing to do. But he did that he would not lend to unsecured loans only. Why is that? Because unsecured loans में recovery जो होती है in times of NPS होती ही नहीं है, कुछ होती नहीं है. At least secured lending में आप कुछ वापस ले सकते हो. The second point is, in 2013, he clearly said that I will not lend to infrastructure, I will not lend to jewelry, I will not lend to the telecom sector, and he was able to duck most of the NPAs that are there. In fact, Reliance Communication बोलो या Kingfisher बोलो, सबसे वो बच के बाहर निकल के एशिया रिचेस्ट बैंकर इसीलिए बना है क्योंकि he did all these commonsensical things which unfortunately many top banks in this country were not able to really do. The third important thing in 2015, he says this, that I will not restructure loans and I will slip all the loans into NPA to show my investors the true quality of my book. Asset quality का सच्चा picture मैं दिखाऊंगा. We already know what happened in one of the top private sector banks in this country where they वो restructure loans करते जा रहे थे, and market confidence on that management really blew up. So the point really is, one of the biggest factors when you invest in a financial, be it any sort of financial, is the quality of the management, the ability of the management to take decisions, and that ultimate decision will turn out that वो alone NPA होता है कि नहीं होता है. So in this cycle, I have seen so many managements chasing growth, forgetting about asset quality and mispricing loans. The first point. Where you have to avoid this is that you have to stick with a very high quality management which is trying to diversify its book, not concentrating its book on one side of it. Let me give you a broad example. Country's top private sector bank, stock price may move up, stock price does not move up, everybody has their own bias. अब यहाँ पे देख लो मैनेजमेंट अपना दिमाग कैसे यूज कर रही है. As Ravi said, as Ravikant said, that look, everybody is stupidly going to retail loans thinking that retail loans are safe, and PL or CC loans कर रहे हैं. This whole consumption boom is driven by PL and CC. Most banks are growing very aggressively there, and everybody wants to do it. A predominantly corporate bank, which was ICICI Bank, is now a predominantly retail bank. So what does the top private sector bank do? It has switched its book. HDFC Bank is no longer a retail bank. It is a corporate bank because it is already seeing that most banks have left the turf on the corporate side of it, and it is able to negotiate with customers what kind of customers it really wants, and it is going ahead and lending to people where it thinks that NPAs nahi honge. It is lending to predominantly companies like Tata Group of companies, or it is predominantly going and lending to PSU companies. So management is using their brain. They're not switching it off by saying that हम लोग कॉर्पोरेट्स को लेंड नहीं करेंगे क्योंकि फ्यूचर में एनपी होगा. अगर कोई अच्छी अंडरराइटिंग कैपेबिलिटी है जहाँ पे वो मार्जिन बना सकते हैं, तो वो जाके वहाँ पे लेंड कर रहे हैं. द सेकंड पॉइंट. द थर्ड पॉइंट इज, अभी कोई बोलता है कि एनआईएम नहीं है, एनआईआई नहीं है. अगर आप कॉर्पोरेट में लैंड करोगे तो सिंपल बात है, कॉर्पोरेट में द क्वांटम ऑफ मनी दैट यू गिव आउट is very high and the margins are very low as compared to a retail product. So the point is you need to first understand कि बैंक के अंदर क्या हो रहा है. बैंक के अंदर क्या हो रहा है, मैनेजमेंट अपना दिमाग लगा रही है कि नहीं लगा रही है, या फिर एक इस रिटेल बूम के अंदर पागल हो जा रही है. Those managements who grow very, very fast and unsecured right now at this stage will be the managements who start to blow up as the NPAs will come about. And one thing is guaranteed in the financial services sector, that NPAs will come about as the stress in the economy continues to keep moving on. Why I keep saying that the stress in the economy will not show up now? Because right now the economy has healed. The slowdown will take about 12, 24 months to come around. And that is the real time when NPAs will start to push in. But as I said before, the market has already priced the optimistic scenario. That's the second point. Ability of the management to duck NPAs is one of the most crucial factors that you look for when you invest in a financial. अगर management वो कर सकती है, तो वो हर एक दूसरे पैरामीटर का ध्यान रख लेगी. Beat NIM, beat NII, beat employee cost, because the management knows how to grow a bank, really. And there have been multiple examples of this. There are one or two small private sector banks who are doing this. There are large private sector banks also who are doing this. The second point. The third point is the discussion should have been around the large private sector banks, small private sector banks, then go on to PSU banks, then go on to gold lenders, and then go on to the micro lenders. So I will briefly touch about all of these 5 people because ये 5 चीजें exist करती and the 6th one is NBFCs. So in these five spaces, in the large private sector banks, as I already said, these people have excellent moats. These moats are irreplaceable and इनके business model में ये empaneled है. Now in the middle मैं एक question को भी address कर देता हूँ कि why I don't think I have been extensively working in the financial services sector. मैं बैंक के साथ ही काम करता हूँ. I don't think that fintechs will be any threat to banks. Why do I say so? Fintechs will force banks to adopt technology faster. Banks are like elephants. They don't adopt technologies way too fast. None of the banks, people say that ICICI Bank has a good interface. I tell them that आप fintechs पे जाके देखो तो fintechs के पास इससे कहीं ज़्यादा अच्छी technology. All banks are very poor at adopting technology. Fintechs will force banks to adopt technologies, but at the same time, fintechs don't have the raw material as banks have because RBI will never give them a license. So fintechs inherently will have to partner with banks, and that's how they will grow. We have seen this with Paytm. We have seen this with, as Ravi was saying, with Euro Capital, and so many other companies that inherently, अगर वो fintech model में अगर करना चाहते हैं तो वो blow out होंगे. Because the credit costs are so high. I was talking to Rajiv Jain from Bajaj Finance. He says simply this: fintechs can never thrive in India because on any retail consumer product, the credit costs are anywhere between 20 to 25%, which means every year आपका capital उड़ जा रहा है to the tune of 40 to 50%. And it is hard to replenish that kind of capital if you don't have a strong deposit base. So from that perspective, people who have a strong deposit base will always win. So fintechs will enhance the technology adoption for banks. At the same time, banks will start to co-lend so that the reach for these fintechs will continue to become strong, as we've seen in the case of Paytm, where they are growing very, very fast. Coming back to the large private sector banks will continue to gain market share on deposit and loan growth. They are the place to be. They'll borrow at anywhere between 3.5 to 4% and lend at anywhere between 8 to 9%. They are excellent franchises, excellent moat, and they will continue to be a very healthy compounders. Valuation wise, they have been priced to perfection, in the sense there is no scope for any valuation expansion happening if they are cyclical, as in the case of SBI, because SBI has some promoter driven ambitions which is why it remains cyclical. So वहाँ पे valuation de-rating re-rating होता रहेगा as the market really sees that ROA ROE कैसा चल रहा है उसका, तो उसकी वजह से re-rating या de-rating होगा. The first point. The second point is small private sector banks. The biggest problem that the small private sector banks have got, that an SBI or an HDFC or an ICICI can lend at 9%, but they will not be able to lend at 9% because most of their cost of funds are anywhere between 5 to 6%. So basically, what we are saying is that tier two banks or the small private sector banks are lending to tier two customers, and the probability of NPS coming out from tier two customers is always higher. So when you try to have a valuation, you will have to have a valuation where ये प्राइसिंग करना चाहिए कि यहाँ पे probability of NPS higher है because of the type of customers that they are giving loans to. Another question that comes in that HDFC को 3 टाइम प्राइस टू बुक मिलता है तो स्मॉल प्राइवेट सेक्टर बैंक्स को क्यों नहीं मिलता है, या ICICI को मिलता है तो इनको क्यों नहीं मिलता है. पॉइंट नंबर 1, ICICI and HDFC have a strong track record, they have a strong brand. अगर येस बैंक जैसा केस होता है तो पीपल विदड्रॉ मनी फ्रॉम प्रैक्टिकली मोस्ट बैंक्स एंड पुट मनी इनटू HDFC, ICICI, SBI. These are super quality franchises, and they have seasoned their NPAs for a long period of time to tell the market that you can at least believe on our asset quality, which for a small private sector bank takes time. I'm not saying it cannot happen, but it takes time for the market to understand कि इसको लॉन्ग टर्म कंपाउंडर के टाइप से आपको 3 टाइम्स 4 टाइम्स देना है कि नहीं. Of course, within the market cycles, the market will continue to derate and re-rate these small private sector banks. But for them to become long-term compounders, they will have to prove their ability that उन्होंने properly lend करने का mechanism बना दिया है कि नहीं बना दिया. Every lender comes and says that हमने fintech technology का use किया है, हम credit underwriting करते हैं, ये करते हैं, वो करते हैं. But the true test comes when the NPAs come out. So the second part of it, small private sector banks, some of them will graduate to become large private sector banks. Who are they? Now that's where the analysis is, and that's where the real money is. Somebody will find them and somebody will won't. That's the second point. The third point is on PSU banks, I want to make it very clear. Nothing has really changed. PSU banks may, the profitability over 21, 22 was extremely depressed, and वो depressed profitability पे हमको दिख रहा है कि profits have grown at 50 to 100%. Pure play underlying promoter, we cannot judge the promoter, but the promoter has got social responsibilities on them, and because of that, they will be going and lending to mudra loan or agri loan or promoters or groups with questionable intent, and that's why the NPAs will continue to keep coming out. So there, as you had already seen, one of the top actors yesterday, उनके घर के ऊपर एक PSU बैंक ने नोटिस लगाया था, और within some pressure, they had to release it up. So they will continue to remain cyclical. Don't take them to be long-term wealth compounders. Don't overstay your time within the PSU banks, even with an SBI. SBI does have a superb quality franchise. In fact, I say that SBI has got the best quality franchise in this country, but it also has some social obligations because of the government being the owner, and we cannot rule that out. So that's on the PSU banks. On micro lenders, on micro lenders, they are susceptible to cycles. As Ravi was saying, they are susceptible to any shock that the economy may get. So Demon was one of the shocks that economy got. Then from there on, the COVID shock was another shock. So their cycles are very fierce and very strong. So on a down cycle, most of the micro lenders will end up losing a lot of money. And during an up cycle, most of the micro lenders will end up making a lot of money. For example, today, most people are chasing XYZ micro lenders. You will find that this could be the best time in the next 12 to 24 months to offload them, because once a credit shock comes into the economy, which you will not know, which you will only know in hindsight, most of these lenders will end up losing a lot of money. And therefore, you need to be very careful. It's a very high risk, high return game where these guys lend anywhere between 25 to 30%. And when these guys lend at 25 to 30%, those are the lowest quality borrowers, where any shock to the economy will directly mean that they will have a shock on their livelihood, directly affecting the ability for them to pay off the loans. So from that perspective, you need to be very, very careful. Do not chase these lenders at any valuation, because micro lenders will be cyclical, and they will be far, far more cyclical than any other type of lender out there. Then the second last one is the gold lenders. So in gold lenders, what we are seeing is that banks are coming out and aggressively lending to this sector. Banks had ignored this sector all from 2014 to right up till 18, 19, 20. The ILFS crisis was the turn of events for most gold NBFCs because now banks have come aggressively into this sector and they are aggressively mastering the lower interest rate. And now even SBI has a 30-minute disbursal process. What is really happening here is the margins of most of the gold lenders are continuing to erode, and they will continue to erode because banks have a very high, superior quality franchise. Cost of deposits is low. So the point is, banks will continue to eat market share, and they will force NBFCs to lower down their interest rates, which is already what we are seeing, and they will also force NBFCs to look at other spaces now, which is the other thing that we are seeing, that both the other gold NBFCs are now shifting towards micro loans and other types of loans, which is the exact juice. So there are some of the banks who are doing exceptionally well, where the gold loan growth is very, very good. But the narrative has now, in my opinion, fundamentally shifted from NBFCs to gold lending banks now. Some of them are doing exceptionally well. And the last one then is NBFCs. As somebody was saying, 2014 to 2018 was a phase when NBFCs took away a lot of market share. From 18 onwards, NBFCs have faced a terrible times. And now it has been very clear that the regulatory mode, the regulatory light touch that the RBI wanted to give the NBFCs will no longer exist, and NBFC regulations will start to become very tightened, and that's why we've seen that the arbitrage is gone, and HDFC has chosen to merge with HDFC Bank. So the arbitrage is really gone. Some NBFCs will still do well, like the top NBFC in this country. However, uh, most NBFCs will find it very, very difficult to operate unless and until they collaborate with some sort of bank, where the bank, with its cost of fund, is able to help the NBFC get the cost of funds down. Deposit taking NBFCs will still continue to do well. Non-deposit NBFCs will find it a challenging phase. But the broader point is that 2014 to 2018 golden phase of NBFCs doing well will not come back ever now, because now firmly the RBI has taken down the arbitrage, and firmly the RBI is now pushing for small NBFCs. As they become bigger and bigger, they want them to convert into a bank. So here and there, NBFCs will continue to keep doing exceptionally well. The smaller ones are coming up and they're doing well, but as they grow bigger and bigger, the RBI will come and tell them that you need to switch over to a bank. So broadly, those are the five branches of lenders. Broadly, I have touched on them. No, I have not tried to touch any stock specific way. And I have also tried to touch what you should be seeing in a lender while you are investing. The biggest point for the market is for valuations to expand would be the ability of the management to duck most of the NPAs. The valuations will sustain for those banks where the management is exhibiting this. The valuation will come down for those managements who don't experience this.
Thanks, Aditya. So Vineet is about to leave for dinner. He has something to say. So we go to Vineet first, then Ravikant, and Parth will come after that, please. Yeah, Vineet, bye.
Sorry, guys, I had to leave. Just a small addition to what Aditya was pointing out on the valuations. Past 10, 20 years, HDFC has exhibited good 20-25% growth CAGR. But given the kind of size Bajaj Finance and HDFC has become post the merger, I don't see that growth coming in the future, the same pace. The growth will come, but at a lower pace, and hence, since the valuation is a factor of both growth and efficiency of the business, eventually, people who have better growth and better efficiency will get better valuations than small or lower growth and better efficiency. So it has to be a combination of both growth and efficiency. That's it from my side.
Thanks for joining, Vineet. We'll see you again. Yeah, Ravikant, over to you.
So I would just want to add like a point. So promoter quality is promoter slash management quality is paramount. There is no debating to that, and to an extent, it's very commonsensical also. But then the thing is that my take, especially with respect to like promoters, like management in financials, is a bit different. So there is a saying in Hindi, sir, like that, like जिसके घर गेहूं सूखता है उसको लोग आटा उधार देते हैं. That is a person who has like wheat drying on their like terrace. People prefer to borrow wheat to them. Okay, and I think this adage makes its point very directly. So, in my opinion, the overall promoter quality or management quality which we are talking about here is should be yes, like underwriting, quality of underwriting and all is one aspect. In my opinion, the more like emphasis should be given to like to what extent the promoter is hell bent to you know protect their business. For example, we have witnessed like the collapse of Yes Bank, but like few of us would remember that at the same time there was another mid-size private sector bank which was facing some serious kind of issues. But the sole difference was that Yes Bank was reliant on external funding. $2 billion worth was funding needed by Yes Bank. And for the other bank I'm talking about here, the promoter itself was hell-bent was hell-bent on increasing their share in the bank. So that is something which needs to be taken in mind while we are thinking about the sector. Second thing is that like just like any other sector which is cyclical, from a pure play investor point of view, see the top rated companies, they have already like valuations which factor in all the quality points which we have talked. And that is why it is said that whenever a cyclical sector goes for an upcycle, it is never ever the front runners, the front leaders of that sector which perform or outperform. It will always be the second and third tier of the league which will show the maximum traction. Because again, my point of view is purely from an investor point of view. Because as an investor, like our primary duty is to make returns, and that thing needs to be kept in financials also. Likes of like HDFC, like ICICI, SBI, and all. Everyone knows like what quality aspects are there. Uh, Whenever like returns are made, they will be made on two cylinders. There has to be a re-rating and the performance of particular, and the re-rating aspect will be much stronger in the second and third tier banks, and which we are witnessing also. Last but not the least, like as far as this like quality or the richest like banker in the world etc goes, in my opinion, like like contra to what legal adage goes, guilty till proven. I believe like being skeptical, because like only when like there is a like shift in the management of that particular bank which we will be seeing very soon, we will see a better picture, because even that KMP, key management personal risk, is there in the valuation of that particular bank. So these small points need to be kept in mind before we take a investing decision.
Thanks, Ravi. We'll come to you and Aditya again. Parth has been waiting since long. Before I allow Parth, I would request my attendees to connect with us and surely subscribe to the YouTube channel where I will be uploading recording of this session. And previously also there are 159 different diverse sessions about the market. So I would like to ask you people to appreciate by connecting with us. Yeah, Parth, over to you.
Thanks for allowing me to speak. I think I have been an analyst for a decade almost, but I'd be upfront. I've not spent as much time on analyzing banks and NBFCs. So I'd like to through my perspective of how I look at banks and NBFCs as businesses, and my framework, especially at valuing banks and NBFCs. And I'd be more than happy for you guys to correct me if I'm wrong anywhere. So one thing I understand, like a bank as a business, if I were to compare with like a manufacturing business, the raw material for a bank is probably the cost of borrowing. So one thing I understand is the lowest cost borrowing bank would have some kind of moat in the market in terms of having higher NIMs. Uh, so that is one. And second, what I don't really understand is why do we value banks on a price to book multiple. It's not very intuitive to me when we value a bank or an NBFC at a price to book multiple. I simply believe that the function of banks is probably generating an ROE multiple. So if I were to simplify further, the debt to equity for a bank or an NBFC would range anywhere between 3 to 7 times. So whatever profit you would generate would get added to your equity over time, and then you can lever the equity up to 3 to 7 times and generate further profits and grow. And obviously, I'm taking the cyclicality aspect out when I'm talking about the general business mechanism, right? Uh, so what I would understand is banks and NBFCs alike usually have ROEs between 10 to 20%, and using the conventional ROC multiple mechanism, I think a fair value multiple for banks, obviously function of NIMs and NPS and qualities of management, would range between 10 to 20 times. Right. So one, I think it's a fairly simple process of ascertaining what kind of growth a bank would be able to generate. Again, I think Aditya very rightly pointed out the ability to grow for gold loan players like Muthoot and Manappuram. While they have had good ROEs, their ability to grow has been tarnished because of higher competition by the banks. But nonetheless, I think their ROEs are fairly superior when you compare it to other players in the market. Would not these guys have the ability to command greater multiples provided they can allocate capital in a more conducive manner, like probably Manappuram has diversified with their Asirvad microfinance business, and understanding that these guys have been in the business for more than a couple of decades now, their ability to understand the business probably would be slightly different from a traditional gold loan business. But regardless, they'd end up making good money in the future for their shareholders. So my thought process is again valuing banks on a price to earnings multiple, which is not very commonly heard of in financial markets. So one, if my understanding is probably lacking somewhere, I'd love for you guys to throw your thoughts.
Yes. I will just want to correct you. What does really happen for banks is that whenever a bank continues to raise money, the EPS will continue to keep getting diluted because of the fact that the number of shareholders will continue to keep increasing as the bank continues to raise money. For example, IDFC First Bank has raised about 4 times in the last 4 years. So what really happens is EPS dilute होते जाएगा, and EPS will not be able to gauge the exact amount of profitability that the bank has really made. So earnings per share will be a very different metric for a lender who is trying to raise money every 2 to 3 years. Very, very difficult metric to use there.
All right. Ravi, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I would like to add one thing. So, like price to earning, you can use, but for like not for interbank comparisons. Aditya was spot on in pointing the issue which is there if you use price to earning. Also, because of the fact that banking is a highly leveraged business, the earning aspect may not be able to reflect the financial stability of the bank, like as well as price to book value, as book value aspect reflects the like total assets which the bank has created over time for itself.
Thanks, Aditya and Ravi. I think one last point is like I as an investor, I'm sure most of other investors have a matrix of putting valuation into perspective. So when we talk about traditional manufacturing companies, we usually say that the higher ROC would generally equate to a higher self-sustainable growth rate, and hence commanding a higher multiple. Do you guys use a particular framework probably for saying okay itna ROE or ROA hoga to this kind of price to book multiple is justified, or it's not plain and simple as that?
So let me take that and let me also address to this fact that there is a real misconception that अगर कोई lender बहुत fast grow बहुत बड़ा हो जाएगा तो उसका growth rate slow हो जाएगा तो उसका valuation नीचे आना चाहिए. Misses the point, or really misses the point here. Of course, growth rates are very important. But again, as I said to you, most people fail in financials. I've seen very few good analysts that who really make money in financials. फाइनेंशियल्स में ना बहुत एक साइकिल चलता है जब अप साइकिल में तो बहुत अच्छा होता है बट डाउन साइकिल में स्टॉक्स गेट हैमर्ड लाइक एनीथिंग इनफैक्ट आई हैव आल्सो बीन हैमर्ड इन one or two stocks and there's no shame in accepting it. Market will not give you extra premium for just for the growth. If the market figures out that you have the ability to lend properly and get back the money, as I had said this before as well, higher growth rate does not mean anything to the market. Let me give you a broad example. RBL used to grow at about 30-40%, and the market gave it a very high premium for 2 to 3 years. And then, as the market saw that the NPS came out, today it trades much below its book value. So the point really is इतना वो नीचे ट्रेड कर रहा है कि एमएनएम ने जाके उसमें इन्वेस्ट कर दिया बिकॉज इट फील्स दैट द वो बुक वैल्यू से नीचे है. Market in the long term, market in the short term is irrational. It can do XYZ number of things. Market in the long term will only give you a high multiple if you have sustainable growth with the ability to have sustainable amount of NPAs. If there's a shooting up of NPAs, the valuation will go away. The valuation will not sustain. This is something, as they say, investing is not a science; it is an art. Multiple examples over long periods of time, you will realize this. Market ने short term में उनको बहुत बड़ा multiple दिया. Let's take the example of Yes Bank also. Yes Bank में जैसे ही market को पता चला कि बहुत सारे issues हैं with the book, they derated the book. In the long term, HDFC में डीरेटिंग हो रही है, री रेटिंग हो रही है, जो भी हो रहा है, कुछ भी फैक्टर्स है, बट market will give it a higher multiple only if and only if it feels that the quality of the book is good and what they are doing is absolutely correct. So growth को growth के साथ आप कभी compare मत करो. Lending एक leverage business है, तभी मैं बार बार बोल रहा हूँ lending is a leverage business where if you lose 100 rupees you don't lose 100 rupees क्योंकि वो एनपीए तो बनता है उसके ऊपर आपको 100 रुपए की प्रोविजनिंग और पीरियड टाइम और करनी होती है बिकॉज वो एक लेवरेज बिजनेस है. सो इन लेंडिंग द एबिलिटी टू नॉट लूज मनी is the exact framework that will make you money. So what is my framework? As I have clearly said to you that I don't look at any of these parameters. I will look at the management, and it takes me about 2 to 3 years to decipher one management. Once I've deciphered a management, I don't leave the management because I know then it is a long-term compounder story. And we have made money in cyclicals also. Cyclical investing in financials. We have made money in long-term investing in financials as well. In financials, to make money in the long term, you will need to have a management whom you can trust, whom of course गलत काम तो बहुत सब most managements हर एक industry में करते हैं, but the ability to control NPAs is one of the most crucial factors. Let me now also give you an example. Bajaj Finance had one of the worst times in COVID, one of the absolute worst times in COVID, where they had done XYZ number of things. But the ability of Bajaj Finance to control NPAs is the sole reason why the market gives it 7 times price to book. Even if Bajaj Finance ka growth of 40% nahi raha, it's down to 25%, and people keep thinking, why is the valuation so high? It is because अगर वो high base पे 25% भी grow करेगा और उसको NPAs नहीं आएंगे, the amount of profitability that it is adding is tremendous. So from that perspective, until they have this ability, they will be trading at high multiples, even though the growth continues to keep coming down. And on the framework, point number one is management, judgment of management. Rest all points are very bookish because, as I said before, I have seen many managements and I have also been betrayed by some of the managements where मैनेजमेंट ने ध्यान नहीं रखा और पैरामीटर स्लिप हो गए। मैनेजमेंट अच्छी है तो वो पैरामीटर्स, सब पैरामीटर्स को अपने आप टेक केयर कर लेगी, आपको वरी करने की जरूरत नहीं है कि इस क्वार्टर एनआईएम क्या था, इस क्वार्टर एनआईए क्या था। और फ्रैंकली मैं आई विल टेल यू, आई वाज सिटिंग विद वन ऑफ द मैनेजमेंट्स एंड मैनेजमेंट देमसेल्फ डोंट नो कि एनआईएम क्या होगा या एनआईए क्या होगा। It's all just a matter of quarterly reporting, that is. So that's how you should be taking it. Of course, I'm a long-term investor. I'm talking for a long-term investor. In the short term, as Ravi said, that as the cycle continues to keep move up and down, worst quality lenders will make most of the money. That's how it is.
Ravi, just before you go, I think Aditya, appreciate it. I completely understand that growth is a matrix is completely different, but I'm saying more from a perspective of taking two good quality banks together. Let's put an example of Kotak and HDFC, where you understand that long-term business understanding of both these managements is at par, if I were to say so, right? So then, if you were to compare two players of the same quality, then do you have a valuation matrix saying that a particular bank who has a greater ROE, ROA, or an ROE, ROA of XYZ should be given a price to book multiple of XYZ from that perspective?
So HDFC and HDFC and Kotak Bank, very different banks, very different mentality. Let's give an example. Unsecured retail lending जो है वो HDFC बैंक ने मास्टर किया था और कोटक उसके आसपास भी नहीं जाना चाहता था, बिकॉज उनके पास वो एक्सपर्टीज नहीं थे. कैश फ्लो बेस्ड लेंडिंग, सम पीपल लाइक HDFC बैंक, सम पीपल लाइक वी वैद्यनाथन, ये लोग कैश फ्लो बेस्ड लेंडिंग समझते हैं. कोटक बैंक को वो समझ में नहीं आता है कि कैश फ्लो बेस्ड लेंडिंग होता क्या है. वो एकदम वन ऑफ द सेफेस्ट प्लेयर्स वांटिंग टू प्ले द साइकिल प्रॉपर्ली. सो लेट मी गिव यू एन एग्जांपल. इन 2018 व्हेन द IL&FS क्राइसिस केम आउट, उससे उससे 2 क्वार्टर पहले ही Uday Kotak started to become cautious because he started to see in the market that a lot of mispricing of loan is happening and a lot of loans are starting to turn NPLs. I did not see HDFC Bank doing that. HDFC Bank would go ahead and lend because they thought that they have the ability to get the A class borrowers per se. So both of them are very different banks per se, but I will give 80% marks to both of the banks on the management, then rest 20% of the marks on ROEs and whatnot. इन्वेस्टिंग में ना कुछ पैरामीटर्स होते हैं जो प्राइस नहीं किए जा सकते. मैनेजमेंट टू प्राइस टू मैनेजमेंट जो होता है वो बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट चीज़ होती है, एटलीस्ट फॉर मी इन फाइनेंशियल्स and for most of the people who have made money. Let me also give you an example. The great bull Rakesh Jhunjhunwala, I had invested in Federal Bank ever since 2015. From 2015 right up till 2018-19, he was not able to make money on Federal Bank, and being frustrated, he sold out the bank at about 0.8 times price to sales or somewhere thereabouts. He was very frustrated with the bank, with them not performing really well. The only difference between them and Kotak was Kotak का execution capabilities far superior है, और वो far better growth दिखाया उन्होंने with NPAs being avoided, whereas Federal from 2014 right up till 2018-19 had a lot of NPA issues. वो NPAs में stuck हो गए. तो वहाँ पे there was a difference in growth perspective. So I'm just using as a Kotak as an example because it is the clearest example of how good managements really grow. Now I have exposure in small banks where I feel that they are the ones who are going to do exceptionally well, and when the market figures out, you will see a valuation re-rating per se. Now, once the valuation re-rating happens, you cannot say that this will get 5 times or this will get 7 times. For example, on Asian Paints. Once it is overvalued, you cannot say वो 60 times पे trade करेगा या 80 times पे trade करेगा. That is really on the market about what the market wants to say, wants to give it a multiple. But one thing you really realize that market इस stock को एक बहुत ज़्यादा high multiple दे रहा है. You understand this, then with time you understand कि वो क्यों ये multiple दे रहा है. तब आपको समझ में आएगा कि क्या valuation metrics होना चाहिए per se.
Yeah, Ravi.
So the thing is that, see, first of all, I do not subscribe to the dichotomy of short term and long term, because classical economics में बोलते हैं summation of short terms is what long term is. And like be any term, like from an investor point of view, the only term like I am concerned with is रोकड़ा कितना बना. So that's there. And as far as management quality goes, तो एक line मैंने पढ़ी थी, I will quote that. What's known is in NPA and what's unknown is in bank vaults. So like it's matlab, one should be very 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 susceptible. Like आप quality 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 harp करते रहो, लाइक चीजें चेंज होते रहती हैं. एज फार एज लाइक इवन कोटक गोज, इट्स ग्रोथ आई थिंक लाइक ऐसा कोई ऑर्गेनिक नहीं है. आई थिंक दे क्वाइट फ्यू इयर्स बैक दे हैड एक्वायर्ड अ बैंक कॉल्ड आईएनजी वाइसा, इफ आई एम नॉट मिस्टेकन. एंड वहां से उनका नेटवर्क वगैरह लाइक एसेट्स वगैरह एवरीथिंग काफी उससे बाउंस लिया था. As far as Parthi's question goes, like what I as a framework use for investing into financials. See, I'm a very conservative investor, and I know that financials are कोई भी vertical, any vertical you talk about, like be it microfinance, banking, DFI, whatever you talk about. Margin of safety is very important because this is a sector which is like highly susceptible to CAs, chartered accountants का sophistry. And like there is again a saying in Hindi, आप पछताए तो क्या जब चिड़िया चुग गई खेत. Once you are stuck, you are stuck, and you are stuck for good actually. So I'm a very conservative investor, and like I did make certain investment in like across the spectrum. When price to book value multiple was dirt cheap. If you want to like if you do not want to compare across companies, you can take like the P multiple for the banks also. You can see that the what is that like overall trajectory of like the price to book value or price to earning multiple of that particular institution and how it is bottoming out. That is where you will get your margin of safety. The last point, like a couple of more points I would want to add. See, I follow the adage very clearly. Management वगैरह quality even I keep in mind, but that is something which is like what we call in physics dynamic equilibrium. It is not carved in stone. ओके, वो उसको लगातार मॉनिटर करना रहता है. इन माय ओपिनियन अगेन सिंपल, प्रमोटर और मैनेजमेंट जिसके पास पहले से लाइक रिकोर्स है, फंडिंग है, लाइक अपना पैसा है, दैट विल बी एनी डे मोर रिलायबल टू मी. For example, like one of the recent NBFCs, like list. I mean, they acquired an NBFC and they got into the game. Is Poonawalla a major like comfort level which comes to me apart from the business aspects of Magma FinCorp, which was acquired by Poonawalla, is the fact that Poonawalla himself comes from very strong financial background. And even if there is some like a danger, risk or volatility with respect to lending and all, which is inherent part of the game, he can take care of the business. It won't be, it shouldn't be a case like akin to Yes Bank. Second, like again, like while I too appreciate like the management quality of Bajaj Finance, as I have been invested in that company from 2009 to 2017, and I've seen a fair bit of the part of its journey. What made me admire Bajaj Finance was not their like other parameters, but the fact that when all other NBFCs of different size, were going for applying for banking licenses, be it like small financial bank, or maybe like even universal banking license and all, Bajaj Finance categorically chose to decline it. That in truest sense reflected upon the like the overall vision of the company, and for that I really appreciate them. That's like from my side, what Parth asked, what is the framework you look at as an investor while you make decisions with respect to investing into financial firms.
Right. So Ravi, Aditya, so we'll be like closing. So any concluding remarks so as to like summarize the session quickly, and we couldn't take many questions today, so surely one follow up session wherein we can like take questions maybe on chemical and financials at one go, or maybe two sessions for questions. So yeah, over to you guys.
Yes, so as I said, that financials per se or any other sector in the market will continue to remain cyclical. Point number one, as everybody has elaborated well, within this, the market is now pricing in the record ROEs, and the market will extrapolate at some point in time that this will continue forever. So you need to be mindful of the valuations, you need to be mindful of the quality of the lender, and that's how you need to invest. Don't get carried away by the euphoria that X stock is giving 20% growth or 30% growth or 40% growth. So in order to chase that growth, you need to go ahead and invest in that stock, because it is very likely that the market has already priced in that 30, 40, 50% growth that it is expecting over the next 2 to 4 quarters. And from that perspective, you get bitten hard when the cycle really turns about. So the cycle is going, the cycle is strong. In my opinion, the cycle will continue to remain strong anywhere between 12 to 36 months. Nobody can say when the party will really end, but don't get caught out on the wrong side of the party. Try to invest in high quality companies right now at this stage, because now the cycle has turned. Up cycle में invest करके आप वो पैसे नहीं कमा सकते जो आप डाउन साइकिल में इन्वेस्ट करके पैसे कमा सकते हो. एक्सेप्शन हमेशा रहेंगे हियर एंड देयर जहाँ पे मार्केट ने उसको देखा नहीं होगा, बट ब्रॉडली इन जनरल financials are here to stay. Financials will not go away. बैंकिंग लाइसेंस एक सोने की चिड़िया है जो सबको चाहिए वो सोने की चिड़िया, बट बहुत कम लोगों के पास है. तो फिगर आउट करो कि हु इज अ गुड लेंडर एंड ट्राई टू बेट ऑन दैम.
Yeah, Ravi.
So, like, as Aditya Bhai has summarized it very, very nicely. And I would like to just add one point to that. See, we all, like, all of us on this spaces and, like, the broader investing community, we all have this consensus that, yes, in financials, abhi to party shuru hui hai. I would request, my fellow investor brothers and sisters here that to focus on the pockets जहाँ पे अभी पार्टी शुरू नहीं हुई है. Just try to dig in for those sectors, because those are the ones which will offer you margin of safety, and where margin of safety is, there only will be the scope of absorbing business specific volatility. That's pretty much from my side.
Thanks, man. And it was great listening to everyone, especially the speakers who left in between. Special thanks to them as well, and to Aditya and Ravikant for being so clear about their thoughts and keeping. So, guys, whatever had been discussed in today's session should be taken as a starting point. By no means any buy sell recommendation. If you do so, you will be like more vulnerable on losing money. I would highly recommend not to do that. But again, you can take the learning as a starting point and surely try to see if it fits your framework. And I would sincerely request, because it takes a lot of effort to bring the market practitioners and experts. And I will highly recommend you to connect with me and my YouTube channel so that you can, if you are not able to attend the sessions live, surely you can listen to those conversations offline on YouTube. And apart from that, anyone if you have any good speakers to your mind, surely my DM is open, or you can simply tag in a tweet with the name of the person you want me to invite. But again, I prefer people who are like more into education rather than selling their things. And the views shared are individual. So with that, I would thank everyone for keeping with us for so long. You guys are a real asset to us, because you listen to our conversations. Anything, Ravikant and Aditya and Parth, maybe before we close?
Before we close, I want to thank you for conducting these spaces, even though you are not well. Thanks a lot, and good luck to everybody in India, because we've done a phenomenal day today. Thank you.
Many thanks, Aditya. Yeah, Ravi.
Yeah, so I would request all of like all of us present here to definitely go through the YouTube recording of this particular spaces, because these topics are pretty intricate, and the ideas shared here, often in one liner or in anecdotal evidence, they do, if explored properly, if probed properly, they have a very useful, because I have personally benefited out of it. That's why I'm sharing my experience. They have very useful, tangible, actionable insight. So it is always advisable to go through the YouTube recording of this of these particular spaces which you conduct, Prince. It's a commendable job to the investing community, in my opinion.
Thanks, brother. It really means a lot. Yeah, Parth, any closing remarks before we part for the day? Parth, anything on your part, or shall we close?
Thanks, guys. I think it was a very insightful session.
Banking NBFCs has not been my forte. I look forward to connecting with all of you who are there on the call, speakers right now, previous speakers. Thanks for giving me a chance to speak.
Thanks, brother. And like those who are coming for the first time, not saying because I'm doing this, but again, I would encourage you to have a look at the quality of the speakers or market stalwart which have been on our spaces. And surely, like you can, I mean, be it fundamental investing, value investing, growth investing, momentum, factor investing, technicals, STBT, behavior, personal finance, mutual funds. So everything under the sun you will find on my YouTube channel, and that is open for everyone. I would, yeah, it will demand your patience for sure because the conversations are lengthy, and it won't be for people who are looking to become rich overnight. So anyone who has reasonable market expectations is surely going to benefit from our conversations. So Ravi, you raised hand again. So was it by mistake or something
No, no.
to add?
I think there is some lag actually. I had raised hand for
Okay,
the
okay,
last
okay.
3 months.
Not a problem, brother. Thanks for coming. Thanks for joining in.
Yeah,
Thanks everyone.
same here.
Good night. Take
Thanks,
care.
thanks,
We'll
friends.
come up. There are 3, 4 good sessions lined up after this, and surely I'll announce that over my handle. So keep in touch. You can connect so that you are always aware of the sessions we are conducting. Thank you so much. Good night. Take care.
Okay. Yeah. Good night.